here we go. We're doing Trouble in Paradise trial, Hawaii versus Gerhard Koenig. These are basically the arguments, the closing arguments. So we're going to watch Hawaii give their closing argument, and then the defense give their closing argument. Here we go.
A motive, a beating, a confession. Ladies and gentlemen, beyond a reasonable doubt, the state has proven that on March 24th, 2025, Gerhard Koenig tried to kill his wife, Ariel. The state has proven beyond reasonable doubt that Gerhard Koenig committed the offense of attempted murder in the second degree. There are two elements, as Judge read to you a couple minutes ago. Element number one, on or about March 24, 2025, that if in the city and county of Honolulu, the defendant intentionally engaged in conduct. Element number two, we'll get back to in a moment. But the conduct, starting with element one, what is the conduct? What did defendant do? First, he tried to push her. That's the first conduct the defendant did. The second, the syringe. He tried to inject her with an unknown substance. And third, the beating with the rock. That is the conduct that defendant engaged in intentionally. That is the conduct that we are here to talk about for the last several weeks and for today. The second element, that conduct, under the circumstances under which defendant believed them to be, was a substantial step in a course of conduct intended or known to be practically certain by the defendant to cause the death of Ariel Koenig. So element number one, simple, it's conduct. Element number two defines what that conduct is, what it's meant to do. And the conduct in this case was meant to kill. The intent behind each one, plan A, the push, the intent was to kill. When plan A didn't work, the defendant moved on to plan B. Plan B, inject her with the syringe, knock her out, push her off the cliff. The intent behind plan B was to kill. Plan C, when the first two plans didn't work, beat her with the rock, knock her out, drag her over, or just simply kill her outright. The intent behind every single plan was to kill Ariel. Every plan, every backup plan ends in Ariel's death. The substantial step starts with the plan. The plan's in yellow because it's not a substantial.
Wait, I just want to pause here because this is a commentary channel and we're doing a reaction. I do want to say that's a really great point, that if you think about his story and her story, every action he takes, it results in her death. In his story, every action he takes results in her death, basically, or him running for the cops, or him not engaging in any activity that an innocent person would engage with. And look, we understand, we take into consideration that innocent people react differently in weird situations. We can't expect people to act the same way, but he did everything very out of character for everything from calling his son, to admitting he tried to kill her, to taking a nap, to evading police, to fighting with police. Like, there were just so many actions he took, and not one single action even made sense for somebody innocent.
Step yet, it's just a plan. Next, the hike. Again, it's in yellow because he hasn't taken that last step. That last step to show he's committed to carrying out that plan, that shows he's committed to killing Ariel. The first time you get that is with the push. When the defendant takes his hands, tells Ariel, I'm sick of this shit, and tries to push her back off the cliff. That is the first substantial step the defendant took. That didn't work. Ariel went to the ground. Ariel protected herself. The defendant took the next substantial step. He took that syringe out, and he tried to inject her. But Ariel fought back. Ariel fought back, fighting for her life, knocks the syringe away, and then the defendant moves on to plan C, his third substantial step, where he takes that rock, Exhibit 2, this rock right here, the same rock that you've all held.
Oof.
He takes this rock.
Oh my God, they held it? Whoa. Ooh, I'd have to do a cleansing after that. Holding the rock that smashed into her head many, many times, that came away with her blood, her DNA, her hair. Oh, could you imagine touching the murder weapon? Oof, oof.
And he beats her with it again and again and again and again. Those three steps are the substantial steps the defendant took to carry out his plan to kill Ariel Koenig. Before we get any further, what is not a defense? The result of the defendant's conduct. The severity of Ariel's injuries, you'll hear many times trying to minimize them. That is not a defense. The law treats somebody the same, whether they're successful or not. The law treats you the same no matter how good you are at executing that plan, no matter how good you are at actually succeeding in killing somebody. The law treats you the same. As an example, somebody who tries to shoot somebody, who points a gun and tries to end a life, but misses, they've committed attempted murder the same way the defendant committed, in a similar way, in a similar idea as the way the defendant did it in this case. You cannot look only at the results to determine intent. You have to look at everything together. And when you look at everything, it shows one clear answer beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's that the defendant intended to kill her. Let's review how we got there. First, we have Ariel's testimony, and she testified in 3 different areas. First, Ariel told you what happened on the Pali-Puka Trail on March 24th, 2025. She told you what happened when she went up the trail. She told you how she was afraid, how she was nervous about the heights. She told you how the defendant reacted. She told you what happened when she met up with the defendant later. That he pushed her, that she went to the ground, that he took the syringe, that she fought back, and that ultimately he took that rock, this same rock, and hit her in the head again and again. Then, Ariel told you what happened leading up to that day. She told you about their marital issues. She told you about her messages with Jeffrey Miller. She told you all of that. Embarrassing as it may be, she put it all out there. And then Ariel told you about her treatment.
I think that's the key point here. At most, it was embarrassing. That's why I say, like, as somebody who's so strict about cheating, at most those text messages were like embarrassing. You know, even if there was like some flirtation or some idea of maybe I can be with Jeff and not my husband, at most it was like embarrassing. Like, girl, get out of your marriage, girl. Like, we get it. But also, like, nothing happened. So they were at most embarrassing, which means his reaction should have been like, hey, I know this is embarrassing and I feel like really hurt by this, but like, let's fix our marriage. It was, you're a bitch and you're a whore. You're a bitch and you're a whore.
Her medical treatment, her recovery. She showed you the scars that she carries to this day. She showed you the scars on her head where she will never grow hair again.
Ugh.
And everything that Ariel said.
You know what? Somebody in my comment section on one of the videos said, I think he would have killed her even without Jeff Miller. And I actually, in my opinion, agree. I think he was looking for a reason. I really think there's something else going on with him. I think there's somebody somewhere else. I think something is going on. I just do not think this relationship was truly perfect, as he said, up until this moment. I just do not believe that. So whoever said that in my comment section, I do agree. I think like he was looking for a reason.
Is corroborated. These are the credibility factors. These are listed in your instructions that you should be considering for every witness who testified. And we're not going to go through all of them right now, but there's a couple that are relevant for Ariel here. First, appearance, demeanor, intelligence, candor, frankness. Ariel testified in a straightforward, coherent manner. She testified clearly.
Great point, Chad. Great point. You said, I agree. His reaction is incredibly disproportionate. Either that or something is really off with how he perceives the world. Now, okay. I watched, oh shoot, what's her name? There's a psychologist. I started watching her videos on the case, and she said that was the number one thing. Either you see the world so significantly different than the rest of us, but you don't realize it, which is why you're uncanny. The fact that he has such a distorted way of viewing the world that he doesn't get how we see him. That's why, there's an issue with neurodivergence. Let me use this as a tangent really fast. There's that dilemma with being autistic or neurodivergent in the world, right? Where you kind of feel that way, where you're like, why don't I understand how people see me? And then people get really uncomfortable around autistic people. But it's not because we're evil or bad or psychopaths. It's because we just don't understand the social situation in the way that you do, because it doesn't quite make sense to us. Like what you take for granted, we don't get, which is different than this man who's egotistically showing up being like, I didn't murder my wife. I just hit her in the head with a rock. And it's like, well, okay. So you did try to murder your wife. And he's like, how could you say that? You know what I mean? So then there's that. There's like this, like, in what world, even an autistic person would know you can't hit people in the head with a rock. You know what I mean? So like, it doesn't make any sense, right? But sometimes I do think you'll probably hear this a lot, like, oh, that person is probably a narcissist. Nah, they're just autistic. Oh, that person is so selfish. They're just autistic. Like you're assigning maliciousness to them because if you did it, it would be malicious, but they're just doing it because it's natural to them. Now, that's not to say that autistic people shouldn't, that all of us shouldn't adhere to some manners, expectation or framework, and that we shouldn't be kind to people. And we can't just use autism as a reason to, not do anything socially, in line with the script. But it's to say that you're assigning maliciousness where it doesn't exist. Versus he is saying, I didn't hit my wife in the head with a rock because I wanted to kill her. No. I hit her in the head with a rock because she tried to kill me. And that would make more sense if he wasn't literally on top of her when it happened. If he wasn't 20 pounds heavier and many inches taller than her, then sure. Except you are literally more likely to be biologically able, literally, to just hold her down. You should be literally strong enough to hold her down. Now, maybe you weren't. Maybe you would like to say, I am not strong enough to actually hit her down, right? But you were on top of her. She was underneath you. And you're saying she tried to murder you while you were pinning her to the ground? It just, you know what I mean? There's a lot there. And I think at one point he says, she tried to hit me with a rock and she had my testicles and what was the other thing she was trying to do? Like she had 3 arms at one point in his story, right? Versus Ariel said, yes, I tried to get him off of me. I was hitting him away. I was trying to get him off of me, not with the rock, just in general. And she was grabbing his testicles so he'd go, ow, and like try to get up. But he never did those things. And mind you, 2 witnesses, if you guys have been following the case, 2 nurses were hiking that same day, came and saw him mid-scene. They came upon because Ariel was screaming, help me, he's trying to kill me, help me. Right? Okay? Yeah, Chet said she was holding his arms down and holding his testicles. Got it. And then, it's like, how many arms does this lady have?
There were no histrionics, barely any tears. It was straightforward. This happened, then this happened, then this happened. It was not over-dramatized. It was not over-exaggerated. It was straightforward and simple and coherent. She was open to cross-examination. When the answer was yes, she said, yes, sir. When the answer was no, she said, no, sir. And when she didn't know, she said she didn't know.
Versus Gerhardt argued. He kept arguing. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? What's this mean? What's this mean? Oops.
But the last factor is the most important here. The extent to which Ariel's testimony is supported by other evidence. What this means, simply, is corroboration. What level of corroboration is there? There is a lot. Ariel is corroborated by the physical evidence, the scene and location, the rock, the blood evidence, the injuries, the medical supplies. Ariel's corroborated by the digital forensics. What was going on the defendant's computer corroborates what Ariel said. Ariel's corroborated by the other witnesses, by their sworn testimony, by Emil Koenig. Ariel's corroborated by Amanda Morris. She's corroborated by Sarah Buxbaum. She's corroborated by HPD. And in the most important ways, she's even corroborated by what the defendant told Emil.
His son.
You've seen the photos of the scene. Ariel's testimony is corroborated. There's the cliff. It's right there. There's the bloody...
Guys, just a heads up. Chat said that they did watch a few of the, because it shows up live every day after I'm done streaming. They said that they will end up showing photos of like her wounds and stuff like that, which is good. We need to see them. We need to know that this is real and devastating. But if it's going to be upsetting to you, I don't know when it's going to happen. I didn't pre-watch this. So just keep that in mind. Like right now, we can see blood on the bushes, right?
The blood pool in the bush where the defendant was on top of her, where the defendant was hitting her. The physical evidence of the scene, the blood, the crushed plants, the location of this so close to the cliff edge, all corroborates Ariel. The physical evidence, the rock, corroborates Ariel. You've held the rock, you've seen it, you know how much it weighs, you know how sharp it can be on the sides.
Oof.
You've seen the photos of Ariel's blood and Ariel's hair on that rock. The rock corroborates what Ariel said. The DNA evidence. The DNA evidence shows 2 things very clearly. 1, every single sample that was positive for human blood had a likelihood ratio of over 1 trillion for Ariel Koenig. Every single one. The blood on the rock, the blood on the samples from the trail, the blood all over defendant's shirt and shorts. Every single one had a likely ratio of over 1 trillion for Ariel. Reason and common sense tells you all of that blood is Ariel Koenig's.
Hello? Hello? Exactly. Emil says when his dad FaceTimed him, it was the blood on her shirt where he's like, what is that? And he goes, oh, it's Ariel's blood.
Not the defendant's. Second, Ariel Koning's DNA was on both sides of the rock. And think back. Think back to how Ariel demonstrated what she did. She held up her hand. She held up her hand trying to block the defendant. She suffered defensive injuries from it on her fingers, on her thumb, and that's how her DNA is on that rock. Because she touched it. Her touch DNA is on the rock because she touched that rock to try and stop the defendant. The search warrant of defendant's work bag on Maui corroborates Ariel's statement. It shows clearly, conclusively, that defendant had actual possession. Not some sort of theoretical, oh, he's a doctor, he can get this stuff. No, he had actual possession of syringes, he had actual possession of vials, he had actual possession of drugs that can kill. This isn't some, he could have gotten them, he had them. This corroborates Ariel's testimony. And more importantly, these drugs weren't stored in a controlled environment. They were stored in his home, where he had access. He could take them, didn't have to log them or anything, just remove them from his home and do whatever he wanted with them. This corroborates Ariel as well. Lastly, Ariel is corroborated by her injuries. The physical evidence of Ariel's
we
injuries
go.
corroborates exactly what
They might show pictures, so get ready.
she said.
Oh,
Think of the injuries to the top of her head. The stellate laceration. Dr. Grosjean told you there was debris throughout the entire
I haven't seen that
injury.
photo.
They were rocks.
Oh
The
my
defendant swung this
God.
rock so hard that pieces of rock broke off into Ariel's scalp.
Oh,
And there was dirt throughout the entire
oh my
laceration.
God.
And the middle of Ariel's scalp,
Oof.
he described as macerated or crushed. It went all the way down to the bone. You've seen the photo of Ariel from the front. You've seen what's missing from her head. You've seen that there is a chunk of her scalp that is gone. It's right there in that
Trigger
photo.
warning, trigger warning.
And you've seen that she didn't just have scalp injuries.
Oh my
She had
God.
injuries above her eye. She had injuries below her eye. She had injuries to her hand, not even to just her thumb. Her thumb was only where there was a break. But she had injuries to 3 of her fingers. Her thumb, her index, and her middle finger.
Ooh.
Ariel's testimony is corroborated by the physical evidence in.
Could you imagine if they not guilty? That would be, I fully expect a guilty verdict. It's going to stream later when I'm off stream, so we'll do it tomorrow. But I would be shocked if they did not guilty. Like, I don't even know. I am fully expecting a guilty verdict. It has to be.
In this case. Ariel's also corroborated by the digital forensics, the digital evidence. The digital evidence tells you what defendant was thinking, what he was thinking from December 2024 to March 2025. It shows you, first of all, it confirms the motive. It confirms the strong motive defendant had to kill because he was looking up infidelity. He was looking up Ariel's financials. He was looking up his prior divorce. He was going into Ariel's hard drive to look up documents on her computer or from her computer about divorce. He even went to the point where he was buying a spy device to spy on Ariel. This shows what was going on in defendant's mind. It wasn't some simple research. It wasn't taxes. It wasn't self-help.
Stalking.
It was obsession. It was an obsession with Ariel. It was an obsession with infidelity.
Absolutely.
It was an obsession with going over those financials, and it was a plan for divorce. The second thing that the digital forensic shows, most importantly, it shows defendant's familiarity with that hike. It shows you what the defendant looked at before deciding the Polypuka Trail.
I feel so physically nauseous right now. I can't even imagine like seeing those photos and just imagining their life and her children and knowing your dad did that to your mom. Like, I keep thinking about the kids, bro. I keep thinking about those children because I think we forget them in this. Like, literal, imagine that's your parent. Imagine your dad who you love, you have a relationship with, and you think is the greatest dad in the whole world, does that to your mother. Oh, I feel sick.
Is the hike that he should be taking Ariel on. It showed the defendant this picture right here. It showed that the defendant was only interested in difficult hikes. Easy hikes were not for him. The defendant wanted difficult hikes, steep trails, big drops, narrow trails. This is where the defendant wanted to take Ariel. This trail, about a foot wide, somewhere around there. One push is all it would take on this trail. Nothing for her to grab onto. One push, and it's a tragic accident. That is what the defendant was researching. He knew that this trail was not popular from his research. He knew that 99% of the people wouldn't be going on this trail.
Oh.
And he knew that this is where he could execute his plan.
Objection. He sneezed in my presence.
And he didn't share this with Ariel. He didn't share this website with her, so she could make that informed decision before she went on that hike with him. She had no idea what kind of trail she was getting into that day. Lastly, Ariel's test is corroborated by the other witnesses. Ariel is corroborated by Amanda Morris. Amanda Morris, the first person on the scene. Amanda told you the sequence of events. 3 things. First, she heard a woman's voice screaming, "Help, help me." And she gets up the trail because she thinks somebody's fallen off. She knows it's dangerous, she thinks somebody's fallen. And she sees the defendant over Ariel. Amanda sees the defendant over Ariel. She sees the defendant with this rock in his hand, and she sees the defendant hit her. And when she sees that, Ariel cries, "Help, he's trying to kill me." And Amanda sees how the defendant responds. How the defendant responds is nothing. He just looks at her. Ariel's also corroborated by Sarah Buxbaum, the second woman on the scene, the second hiker who intervened. Sarah came in behind Amanda. She saw the defendant standing over Ariel. She saw the defendant standing with that rock. And most importantly, Sarah looked the defendant in the eye. Sarah made eye contact with the defendant and told you how that made her feel. It made her feel unsettled. It made her feel so afraid for herself and her safety when she was looking at the defendant in the eye. It made Sarah feel so unsafe that she and Amanda went back down the trail before they called 911 because they realized this was a dangerous situation for them.
They were afraid for their lives. They were afraid for their lives. So he put 3 women in a position to feel afraid for their lives. 3. Just thinking about that, like they weren't just afraid of the scenario. He is the reason. Him specifically is the reason that they felt afraid for their lives.
They realized after looking in his eyes,
because he's a doctor, they're nurses, not that he knew that at the time, but he made eye contact with them. He could have had reassuring eyes. He could have been like, "Oh my God, help me. My wife's gone crazy." But instead, she said it was 30 seconds and he was looking at her. And she felt like the fear in her and they ran away. That is him.
What could happen to them? And they took those steps after seeing what was in the defendant's eyes. After seeing that look, they took steps to protect themselves.
Yep.
Listen to Sarah's voice on that 911 call. It's Exhibit 3. You'll have it. Listen to her voice, and you can hear what she's thinking about. You can hear the worry in her voice. You can hear that she's afraid for her own safety after she's seen the defendant. It's all there. And you may hear argument today, or have maybe you thought to yourself, well, Amanda and Sarah only saw the end. The evidence shows that Amanda and Sarah didn't see the end of the incident. They caused the end of the incident. Because when they showed up, that is the only thing that stopped the defendant. Ariel screaming for help didn't stop the defendant.
Just put that, guys, there is just no way she wouldn't have been dead. He's like, "Oh, I just hit her twice in the head, so she would stop." There is no way he was going to stop. There's just no way. Like, if those 2 women didn't show up on that hike, Ariel would have been dead. And this trial would have been probably similar, but very different because we wouldn't have been able to hear from her. And I keep playing that over and over in my head. Like, if those two women just made any decision differently, if they decided to take a phone call, and wait down the hill 5 minutes longer, if they had just bent down to tie their shoe, this could have been a difference of 10 seconds. We don't even know. That's what's so crazy about life. You just don't even know what a 10-second decision or what if they had just made one different decision that day. They maybe would have not come across them on time. They maybe would have come across Ariel dead. It's insane to think about. Wow.
Fighting back for her life didn't stop the defendant. The only thing that stopped the defendant, the only thing that was enough for him to stop, is 2 eyewitnesses coming up on the scene and seeing him beat her with that rock. The only thing that got him to stop was being caught red-handed. The responding officers, Corporal Wu, Corporal Chun, they corroborate Ariel as well. They showed you the hike. You saw the hike on their body cam. You saw their struggles with trying to get up the hike. They showed you the scene. Once more, right there in the foreground of this photo, that's where this happened. That's where the beating with the rock happened. And right there, just a couple feet away, that's where the defendant tried to push her. They showed you Ariel's condition.
I know this is a tangent, but when I was in community college, fun fact, this is a billion trillion years ago, I took a forensics class and I had to do something like this where we had to film a scene, evidence, and I had to do a PowerPoint like this. And I can't believe how much it's flooding back to me right now. Like, I was like, oh, that was like, I mean, we were taught by a detective and stuff. Like the class was taught by a professor who was a detective as well. And like, it's kind of, it is literally like, it was like this. It's kind of strange. Just a random lore story there.
Condition, immediately after the defendant did this, they showed you that. They showed you the closest thing to what the defendant last saw Ariel as. And they even caught it on their body cam. They even caught Ariel's condition as she states her name.
Ariel Connick, A-R-I-E-L-L-E. Birthday is March 24th, 1989.
You heard Ariel testify for hours. But also, you heard in this video her slurred voice, her heavy breathing, her condition after the defendant beat her with that rock. She was not okay. The manhunt corroborates Ariel as well. It took 3 different agencies. HPD, DLNR's DoCare, HFD, several different units from them, SED, SSD.
Is that him? Is he making noises right now? Is that on purpose to throw this guy off his game? Is that Gerhardt? Is he making noises?
P9 unit, the major events unit to search for drones. It took 2 drones, 1 helicopter.
Oh my God.
And after 8 hours, or almost 8 hours, they were still not able to find the defendant. And that tells you one incredibly important thing. The defendant did not want to be found.
Exactly.
The arrest corroborates Ariel just as much. Officers Nicola, Koki, and Borges approached Ariel in their vehicle.
No.
Officer
Wait, approached Ariel? Oh.
Nicola testified he got within arm's reach of of the defendant before he
Oh, damn. I was like, damn, not Ariel, bro.
jumped out the car.
Objection. Misstates his testimony.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. Okay, redo it. Undo.
He got within an arm's length, or close to an arm's length, before he got out that car and tried to apprehend the defendant. He identified himself as police. And how did the defendant respond? The defendant tried to flee into the woods. It took a total of 835 pounds of HPD officers to subdue the defendant.
Say that again?
A total of 835 pounds of HPD officers
Ooh.
to subdue the defendant. That's how much he was resisting. He knew they were police. They identified themselves as police. And as Officer Nicola testified, the defendant, in his attempt to get away, fell on his face, and then Officer Nicola fell on top of him. That's why you see the grass on the defendant's head. That's why you see the dirt on the left side of the defendant's face. Because that's where he hit the ground. That's where he hit the ground while he was being arrested. And the defendant's own actions, finally, also corroborate what Ariel told you. Defendant's actions corroborate Ariel's testimony. First, he fled the scene. Second, he collected the evidence from the scene. He collected Ariel's phone. He collected Ariel's purse. And he collected those syringes. He took all those items from the scene, and he disposed of them. Ariel's mom still tried to ping her phone, and it was up at the poly hours later. But they could never find it. And think back, where DoCare couldn't search. They couldn't search the bottom of the cliff. They couldn't get down that way. They searched the whole mountainside, couldn't find it. But the bottom of that cliff that's several hundred feet tall, that's where they couldn't search. Defendant
I didn't realize that. I didn't put that together.
confessed. Defendant called Emil just minutes after the incident and told Emil, I tried to kill Ariel, but she got away. And lastly, the defendant hid in the woods for almost 8 hours. These actions that the defendant took corroborate what Ariel told you. They make sense. That being said, the defendant in this case has testified. And you need to judge his testimony the exact same way that you judge anybody's. At the beginning of this trial, you heard a theme, some alliteration, with a theme, unwilling or unfaithful, unwilling, untrue. But ladies and gentlemen, after listening to the defendant's testimony, you only knew one word to summarize it. One word. Unbelievable.
Amen. I mean, I wasn't sure what the word was going to be, but unbelievable is correct. This is an unbelievable story.
The defendant's story. She started an argument. The defendant's story is that somehow Ariel, on her birthday, on an unfamiliar hike next to a massive cliff, decided to start an argument. Does that make sense to you? No. Ariel decided somehow to start an argument about she said she wanted to go back and continue to work with Jeff Miller. She wants to travel with Jeff Miller. Does that make sense that Ariel would bring this up on that cliffside? No. It contradicts common sense. It even contradicts the defendant's own testimony, where he told you they don't talk about this outside of counseling.
Ooh.
The defendant told you that. And that's what worked for them. And somehow Ariel's bringing it up, ruining her birthday on a hike. Ladies and gentlemen, it's unbelievable. The next part, the defendant's story. She pushed me. The defendant says he felt a hard push from behind, that he was looking out over the cliff. He barely holds himself on. He turns around, and Ariel's already 5 to 10 feet away. Ladies and gentlemen, unbelievable. Ariel was trying to push him off that cliff. She wouldn't be that far away. She would have been right behind him, trying to push him again.
Really? Honestly.
Defendant's story. She pulled me down on top of her. Think about how that makes sense. Defendant's story is that then he approached Ariel. That he grabbed her arms. And Ariel somehow responded by pulling him down on top of her and not letting him go.
Make it make sense.
Defendant's bigger than her. Defendant's stronger than her. Ask yourself, what person would hold a bigger, stronger person on top of them as an act of aggression? It doesn't make sense. It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Defendant's story, she hit me first. Somehow while Ariel's sitting down, or while Ariel's underneath him, while he's in the position of power, while he's on top of her.
Yeah, she wasn't sitting down. He was on top of her.
The story is that Ariel held him down so he couldn't escape, grabbed his genitals, wrapped her legs around him, and then she picks up a rock and hits him in the face. And as the defendant told you, he said, she hit me one time really good, and that she keeps swinging. The same rock the defendant used to beat Ariel? Really? The same rock that defendant has told you he only used 2 times, that he only hit her twice with. Ladies and gentlemen, unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
The same rock, no. You can tell it's different injuries. This is the photo of the defendant immediately after his arrest.
Oh.
This is the photo of the defendant almost 8 hours.
Oh, is he saying that he's saying, wait. Is the prosecutor going to say that he doesn't even think Ariel hit him in the head with the rock? That there's no evidence on Gerhardt that he even got hit in the head with the rock?
After the incident up on the trail. After the defendant tried to kill Ariel. Yes. There's a small dark spot on his cheek. Is it a bruise? Is it dirt? I don't know. This is Ariel. The idea that this same rock caused these different injuries
Oh, God. Oh.
is unbelievable, ladies and
Oh, fuck. Guilty.
gentlemen. The idea that Ariel could hit him really good, and that's it, it's unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
This is the defendant at the hospital that night, and this is Ariel at the hospital on the same day. Again, minor bruise, major laceration. The idea that these injuries were caused by the same rock, completely unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
You can only see that by looking at the next day. Look at the defendant 1 day later. There's nothing. There's no more.
Whoa.
Ariel's got her head wrapped up. She's still got these injuries on her eye. The defendant's story is unbelievable.
Damn, bro.
And lastly, the defendant told you that he wanted to turn himself in. That's what he was doing when he left the trail. Sunset was coming soon. The sun was getting low. But instead of doing the logical thing and walking down the trail where he knew the police would be, the defendant decides he has to come out of the forest onto the road. The defendant doesn't go back to the trailhead. He doesn't put his SIM card back in his phone. He doesn't turn his phone on. because he's not trying to surrender himself. He's not trying to turn himself in. He's trying to escape. And that's why he ran.
Interesting that he never called 911 to say, hey, my name is Gerhardt. I just had an altercation with my wife on the mountain. I'm afraid to come and turn myself in because I'm afraid people will misunderstand what happened, but she tried to kill me. It's interesting that instead he called his son and said, I tried to kill Ariel. It's interesting that he took evidence and tried to, make it disappear. It's interesting that he fought with police officers. Like, it's interesting that he didn't even in that moment think, okay, I'm going to call the police and talk to them, like in a negotiation. He did nothing. He didn't talk to the women who found them. He didn't talk to the police. He at no point said, hey, I didn't do this. Interesting. Did we even... I guess we haven't heard him say the words like, I didn't do this. We've only heard him respond no to questions if he did do it. But I almost want him to say, like, I didn't do this. Even though we know he did it, girl. We know he did it.
And when the police apprehended him, that's why he resisted. The defendant's story, unbelievable. The defendant's story, unlike Ariel's, where Ariel is corroborated, the defendant's story is filled with contradictions. The defendant is contradicted by Amanda and Sarah. Somehow, Ariel finally let go of his private parts, and then he just stands there and looks. He's not on the ground writhing in pain? Does that make sense?
Who is coughing?
He says that she held on so hard that he couldn't escape. Does it make sense that afterwards he would just stand there and stare? No. The defendant is contradicted by the physical evidence. He's contradicted by the fact that there's no blood of his up there. There's no evidence of injuries that support what defendant says happened. He's even contradicted by his own hired doctor. The defendant told you he hit her twice. No more. But even his own doctor said 2 to 3 hits to the scalp. Hits to the face. Hits to the fingers. So even the defendant's own witness shows that he hit her more than twice. He hit her, add them all up, 4, 5, 6, could be any of those times. He hit her again and again and again and again, and he only told you 2 times. Ladies and gentlemen, it's unbelievable. He told you he removed his SIM card with a paperclip. Well,
Yeah, what the fuck was that about?
72 through states 86. That's all the photos. That's all the contents of defendant's backpack. Where is that paperclip?
Oh.
He could have just as easily used that syringe.
And like, why did he even remove the SIM card, huh? Crazy.
Open his SIM card, dispose of the syringe. Hiding evidence 2 ways at once.
Yep.
The substantial step again. He made the plan.
Okay. Locked
He
in.
made the plan to go hiking that day. He didn't share with Ariel what hike they were going on. He didn't share the details of that hike with Ariel. He didn't share the dangers of that hike with Ariel because his plan was to push her off that cliff. So they start the hike, and Ariel deviates from the plan. Ariel doesn't go up to that section from the photo, the super narrow section with no trees. Ariel doesn't want to go up there. So the defendant improvises. The defendant takes a different cliff. The defendant sees his last chance when they take this selfie, his last chance before they get to that lower part of the trail, and he takes it. He takes that chance to try and push Ariel off. He takes that chance. He makes that substantial step. And plan A, the push, doesn't work. Ariel falls to the ground. He can't push her off anymore. So he takes that next step. He pulls out the syringe. Plan B, and he tries to stab her with it. Plan C, when that doesn't work, he takes that rock and he hits her well over 2 times. He hits her again. He hits her again. It doesn't matter that she's blocking. It doesn't matter that she's screaming. The only thing that gets him to stop is these 2 women who walk up. That's it. You have gotten instructions about self-defense. It should be clear. The defendant was using deadly force in this case. This rock is known to the defendant to cause death or serious bodily injury. You don't need to be a doctor, although he is. He's actually treated patients who've had rocks fall on them. So the defendant is well aware of the damage that he was doing. He's more than aware because it was his intent. It was his intent to cause that damage. It was his intent to cause death. So yes, it is clear the defendant was using deadly force. And because of that, self-defense doesn't apply. Or self-defense does apply, but defendant cannot claim it because he was the initial aggressor. He was the one who started the physical altercation. He was the one who used deadly force. And lastly, he had a duty to retreat. When using deadly force, before you use that deadly force, the law states you have a duty to retreat. And the defendant didn't do that.
Incomplete statement on the law.
Objection overruled. Ladies and gentlemen, the court instructed you on what the applicable law is. You need to follow the court's instructions as read out to you and as it's provided in the jury instructions that you have.
The defendant did not follow the law. The defendant attacked her. Self-defense is not applicable. The state has disproven it beyond reasonable doubt because the defendant was the initial aggressor. The defendant was the first one to use force. Based on these facts, self-defense is not applicable. Next, you're given instruction on extreme mental or emotional disturbance. This is a long instruction. We'll keep it simple. There's no evidence that the defendant was acting under extreme mental or emotional disturbance when he tried to kill Ariel. Don't be confused by his testimony. He did say he was under severe emotional distress, but he said that after he tried to kill Ariel. He said he was under severe emotional distress after he started to think about how this would affect his job, how this would affect his life. He was under severe emotional distress after he began to think about the consequences of his actions and how his actions would affect himself. That's what that is. The defendant was not under extreme mental or emotional disturbance when he tried to kill her. He only became that way when he began to think about the consequences. The second part of that instruction states that the defendant's self-control, the defendant's logical thinking is important here. It shows the defendant, when plan A didn't work, he moved to plan B. When plan B didn't work, he moved to plan C. And when he got caught, he fled the scene, he hid the evidence, and he hid himself. That shows the defendant was using logical thinking. The defendant was solving problems as they came. He was not acting under extreme mental or emotional disturbance. Okay. You got a list of other included offenses. You got a list of a bunch of assault charges that are.
By the way, if you guys are not mentally prepared yet, we're going to see the defense go next. I just cannot understand what he's about to say, the defense.
Included in the attempted murder and second degree charge. When you think about those, just think one thing. He did more. This is what he did. Assault in the third degree, causing bodily injury. Ladies and gentlemen, that means physical pain. He did more. He did more than cause physical pain to Ariel. Assault in the second degree. He did more. Yes, the defendant caused a major laceration to Ariel's head, or severe laceration. The defendant caused a bone fracture to Ariel's thumb. Yes, he did those things, but he did more. But he did more because he was trying to kill her. Attempted assault in the first degree, same thing. Defendant took actions that he knew would cause a substantial risk of death. Yes, but he did more. Because the evidence all shows the defendant wasn't intending to do an assault. The defendant was intending to kill. All right. 3 things. Motive, a beating, and a confession. You've seen through this trial the defendant's motive. He was upset. He was angry. And wherever he turned, Ariel wasn't being punished. First, he talks to Ariel's best friend, tries to air the dirty laundry. But the best friend stays on Ariel's side. Deanna stays on Ariel's side. She's not punished. Then he emails Andrea Miller. Giving this other woman Ariel's personal contact information, her cell number, her personal email. But Andrea Miller never responds. Ariel's not punished. And then he goes to counseling. They go to marriage counseling. And instead of focusing on the affair, what do they focus on? These intimacy issues, these issues that Ariel testified about, these issues that were defendant's fault. Everything the defendant tried to do.
Is that his goddamn water bottle? It's like his support water bottle. Somebody said that in my chat when we were first. It's like his support animal, only it's a water bottle. Is that his fucking water bottle in my ear right now?
Everything the defendant tried to do.
This man is trying to piss me off. If I was in that courtroom, I'd be like, what are you doing?
Make sure Ariel was never punished. So he did it himself. Every response defendant had to this emotional affair showed the defendant's need to control Ariel. He wanted to control where she lived. He wanted to separate this woman from her 18-month-old child. That was his response. His response to finding out was, you should move out. He wanted to control her job. He wanted her to quit. He wanted her to be dependent on him. Because once Ariel quit her job, it's much harder to divorce. She has no more income. She can't go find another remote worker, nuclear engineer job. The defendant knew how much a divorce would cost. He was looking at his own documents, his own records from his prior divorce. He was looking at his own records that showed how much he paid in his prior divorce, because that's what he was thinking about. He was doing that math. He was doing that math on what it would cost to divorce Ariel, what he would give up. And he just couldn't stop thinking about it. He couldn't stop thinking about this emotional affair that he's built up in his head. And because he couldn't stop thinking about it, he made a plan. He made his plan to kill Ariel. The beating. Plan C, the third substantial step, the one that's the most visible, the one where she got these injuries. The defendant took the rock. He picked it up. He swung at Ariel again and again and again and again and again. That many swings shows that the intent was not just to hurt. It was not just to defend. The intent was to end her life.
Yeah.
That's what the number of swings tells you in this case. Ariel's only relief, the only thing that stopped him, was the defendant being caught in the act. It was the intervention of Amanda Morris and Sarah Bucksbaum. That's it. So we end with the confession. 10:42 a.m., just a couple minutes after this happened, the defendant calls Emil. It's a video call, not a phone call. So Emil could see what the defendant was saying. He could see the defendant's face. He could see the defendant's mouth moving. There's no gray area with this confession. As Emil testified, he has no doubt about what the defendant told him.
Damn.
There's no phantom gust of wind that came up. There's nothing like that.
Remember they said, oh, it was kind of windy that day, so maybe he misheard him. And I'm like, maybe not. Maybe not.
The defendant confessed to Emil. He told Emil that he tried to kill Ariel. He told Emil why.
He told him, I'm going to kill myself, his own son. I'm going to kill myself after trying to kill your stepmother because my life is over.
He told Emil that Ariel got away. He told Emil that Ariel was having an affair. That doesn't sound like a goodbye suicide message, does it? He told Emil he was at the end of this rope. And think back to the last thing that the defendant told Ariel before he tried to kill her. He told Ariel, I'm sick of this shit. That's corroborated that he's at the end of his rope. Same idea. And what didn't he tell the defendant? What didn't the defendant tell Emil? Nothing about self-defense. Nothing about Ariel attacking him.
Great
Nothing
point.
about what he testified to you.
Because listen. In order for Emil, his son, to not... Okay, obviously this is true. Because his son, assuming he had a good relationship with his dad, whatever that means, would have jumped to self-defense probably. Hey, Dad, are you okay? What happened? But if your dad calls you and goes, I tried to kill Ariel, you're not even allowed to jump to self-defense. You can't even think good of your father. So why would his son lie? So the only reason that Emil misunderstood or he lied is one, either him and Ariel planned it, or the gust of wind came out of nowhere and the Emil just misunderstood. Or what really happened was, before Emil could even ask, Dad, are you okay? What happened? He goes, I tried to kill Ariel. And then that would mean the son would in that moment have to have the realization that, like, you tried to kill Ariel? Like, if this was innocent, if it was self-defense, if it wasn't murder, then why wouldn't the first thing out of his mouth be, you know what I'm saying? Because the son, what if I couldn't even imagine a reality where my dad FaceTimes me and the first thing I don't think is, oh my God, Dad, are you okay? But if I don't even have time to say it because he's like, I tried to kill your mother, it's like, what? What does that even mean? What do you mean you tried to kill? Well, you know, it's just like, it doesn't make any sense.
Is that reasonable? Does that make sense? No. 10:42 a.m., the defendant FaceTime video calls Emil. He confesses. And Emil's next step, after being put in that situation, after being put in a situation as a 19-year-old that he had no want to be part of, Emil does what he does. He goes and tells his grandparents. He goes and tells them what the defendant said.
Her parents. So, mind you, her parents are the ones who live across the street from them. His parents have been behind him during trial to defend him or to support him. You know what I mean? That's what's interesting. And look, if, you know, it's one thing to be in the courtroom. It's another thing, I think, to sit directly behind him. So, like, if this was my relative and I wanted to be there, I just wouldn't sit behind him because it would signal support. I would sit away from him. If he was my son, I would just say, look, I'm here. He's still my son, but I don't support him. Based off the evidence, I support Ariel. So it's interesting, just like the whole dynamic of it all. And it's interesting that Emil isn't biologically related to Ariel. And it's interesting that he has a good relationship with her parents. And it's interesting. All these things are interesting. There's just like a lot of interesting things here, Just as the prosecution needs her passion, Brit. Well, I'll say this about the prosecution. They are professional. So at least there's that. I will say he's doing a very good job of just explaining the facts, which I think does reassure the jury that it's more serious. I'm curious if the defense will take more of a dramatic approach and if that will work on the feelings of the jury or if it will turn them off. I'm curious how the defense is going to play this.
And Judith Mast, ends up texting the defendant, 11:33. She texts the defendant, "Is Ari okay?" She asks the defendant about her daughter, and the defendant says nothing. He doesn't respond. But what he
by the way, apparently in court, Gerhardt kept saying like, "Oh, we had shared custody. I shared custody." Allegedly, from what I understand, and I could be wrong, so you guys can correct me. From what I found, it looks like in his first marriage, he did not have shared custody. But in court, he kept making it sound like, "Oh, I'm a 50-50 dad. I love shared custody of my kids." But it does not sound like that was even what was happening. And especially if they didn't live in the same place, right? If they lived in different places, then how could he be involved? So I'm a little confused, I think, about that story too.
does do shows his intent.
But I'm not surprised he tried to play it off like he was an involved father, because I think that's what a lot of men do. I have a lot of criticism for men who get on the internet and go, "Oh yeah, I'm a single dad." You're not a single dad. If you live out of state of your child, you're not with them every day. You don't have to take them to school. You're not involved. You're a person who has a child. But people will weaponize this idea of like, "Oh, I'm a single dad." You're not a single dad. You're not a single parent unless you are parenting your child. Like, they do this a lot. Like, I see this especially with men. Well, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I got a kid," but you don't even see that kid. You're not involved with that kid. You're basically neglecting that kid for your own self. So again, I don't know what his relationship was initially. And look, I don't even know. I would love to have heard from the kids what he was like as a dad, because you never know. But I highly doubt that this came out of nowhere. I'm pretty sure the reason the kids were so easily ready to support Ariel wasn't just that it's obvious he tried to kill her, but I bet they were like, "Oh yeah, I'm not surprised." Like, Emil doesn't even have a doubt that his dad tried to kill her. Whoa. To not even have a doubt that your dad tried to kill someone is very interesting.
What he does do, he calls Emil again, and he asks him, "Did you tell anybody?" That shows the guilty conscience of the defendant. That shows that the defendant was not acting in self-defense. That shows the defendant was thinking about what his actions would do to himself. He was thinking about himself. He wasn't thinking about Ariel. He wasn't thinking about her condition. It was only himself. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's one verdict and only one verdict that does these things.
I actually think it is, this is maybe anecdotal, but from my understanding, even victims who are attacked by loved ones will be in such disbelief of that reality, they will defend them. No, she didn't mean to do it. No, he didn't mean to do it. It was a mistake. There was a misunderstanding. We had a fight. It's okay. He didn't do any of those things. He at no point gave Ariel the benefit of the doubt. He had at any point advocated for her. He had no point been in disbelief of this himself. He wasn't even shocked. Sure, he tried to kill him in the story. Like, for just a second, he goes, "Oh, she shoves me." And I'm like, what the fuck? So you weren't even shocked. It was like, oh, is this part of Ariel's MO that you fully expected her to try to kill you that day? Versus, Ariel was so wounded from the altercation. I don't even think she had time to really think about like what was happening. But I'm sure she kept running it back through her head, like a disbelief of like, I can't believe he tried to kill me. I cannot believe he tried. It's so hard to imagine he tried to kill me. Or maybe not. Like, maybe, but it's not that uncommon for victims to be like, there must have been a misunderstanding. I mean, heck, I've done this with people in my own life. Nah, that must be a misunderstanding. He didn't mean it. And then you realize, oh, you did mean it. Or, oh, like you did it on purpose? Like, most people aren't moving through life assuming people are going to do horrible things to them. Most of us, I hope, are moving through life just assuming like, oh, they didn't mean to do that. And then you realize, you know what I mean?
There's one verdict that holds the defendant accountable for what he intended to do, for what he tried to do to Ariel. There's one verdict that's supported by the physical evidence, the digital evidence, the corroborated testimony of witnesses, and the defendant's own confession. There's only one verdict that's corroborated that makes sense with all of that. There's only one verdict that the evidence and justice demands. And that verdict is that you find the defendant guilty as charged of attempted murder in the second degree. Thank you.
Oh, do we not clap at the end? Just kidding. Oh my God.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Here we go. Lock in.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to begin by thanking you all for your time and dedication to this case. Most people serve on juries, couple, 2-3 days. You guys have been here for close to a month now, and I want to just express heartfelt thanks for that. It was your time in doing that made sure that Gerhard got a fair trial. That's what this was about, and we appreciate your time tremendously. You know, we're at the end of the trial here, but I want to actually circle back to the very beginning. The very beginning, jury selection, and remind you guys about that. Multiple days, started off with 200-something jurors, whittled it down, excuse after excuse, people couldn't be here, couldn't be fair, couldn't set aside what they heard, weren't willing to give him a fair shake. And we whittled it down to less and less and less, and we ended up with the 16 of you here. And it wasn't by accident. It wasn't by accident. It's because we saw in you what we were looking for. Jurors that would wait until you heard everything. Jurors that weren't going to convict somebody based off of media reports. Jurors that weren't going to just look at one side of things. Jurors who had logic, reason, and common sense. And most importantly, jurors who had integrity to follow the law on reasonable doubt.
Objection, move to strike. None of this is evidence. This is statement. Please continue. I'd like to move to strike the entire closing argument up to this point. Sustain the objection. Mr. Ortaki, please continue.
We went through that process. You guys promised us you would do certain things, and we knew that you would. Now, I'm going to walk you through the evidence and the law today, and it'll be...
Chad says, you're not like other jurors. You're so much kinder and smarter and introspective. Other jurors, they would just judge me, but you really get me.
Be clear that there's reasonable doubt all over this case. All over this case. Before I do, he wants to, unwilling, unfaithful, unwilling, untrue. We talked about that. He wants to say unbelievable. I'll add another unword. Undeterred. They're undeterred by the evidence. It doesn't matter what it shows. They're going to spin it in their favor. They came up with a theory and they went to search for facts to support it. They didn't look at the evidence and say, what's the theory that points that out? They came up with a theory and they tried to find any fact they could to fit it. They were undeterred. Undeterred by the DNA. The DNA shows, and I'm going to go through it, she's holding the rock. This is a trillion level DNA on the unstained side. Undeterred. Oh, it must be because when she was blocking. Undeterred. The computer, I have to call Inuma again to say that sometimes the computer accesses these files. Undeterred. Still shows that he's looking at this credit card statement from 2018 to show that he has a financial motive, that it's cheaper to kill her than divorce her. Undeterred. Undeterred by the fact the eyewitness picks the wrong person out of the photo lineup. And still, she stared at him, looked into his cold, dark eyes, saw him very clearly, picks out the wrong person. Undeterred. Undeterred by the bruise on his face. Oh, maybe it's dirt. Maybe it's dirt. Evidence should lead to theories. You don't come up with a theory and then search for evidence to spin it to fit your theory. That's what happened in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go through just some of the law initially, and then we're going to come back, go through all the evidence, and then I'm going to come back on some other parts of the law. So I want to start off first by...
Initial thoughts. He's going for the passion, okay? He's going for the story. He's going for the theater. He's going for... the Hawaii went for facts and logic. He's going for TikTok story time, watch me do my mascara. Well, I tell you about that time, my client was accused of murder. Okay, I don't know how he's going to spin this one, but let's see.
Mind you, as you know, you took an oath, right? You told us that you would give your word that you would follow the law. You'd follow the law, and we know that you will. I want to start, you can follow along in your instructions if you want. I'm just going to start on page 2. Page 2. I talked to you at the beginning about these 3 principles of justice and fairness that keep our system safe for all of us. Anytime the government waves its accusatory finger at anyone, these principles kick in, and it's a safeguard. It's a safeguard, and that's summarized on page 2. You must presume the defendant is innocent of the charge against him. This presumption remains with the defendant throughout the trial of the case unless and until the prosecution proves the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The presumption of innocence is not a mere slogan. Not a mere slogan, but an essential part of the law that is binding upon you. It's binding on you. It places upon the prosecution the duty of proving every element, material element of the offense charge against the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, I'm a visual learner. I had this chart earlier to help you guys understand how that works. We talked about how
Pause. Is he literally dragging the jury through the basics of what you have to do as a jury person? Is he, wouldn't they know this by now?
the presumption of innocence, you don't start in the middle. You don't start in the middle. It requires that you start here. You start here.
He just said they've been doing this for a month. I think they know.
It requires that.
Is it, are they going to internalize this as like, you think I'm stupid? Do you think I'm stupid? Guilty. Guilty. Like, if, oh, this is,
And then there's a gap. And it's a proof gap. This has to be filled with proof beyond a reasonable doubt before you even step this way. Before you even step this way. If there's no proof beyond a reasonable doubt, you don't move. You don't move. And let's look what a reasonable doubt is. You must not find a defendant guilty upon mere suspicion or about evidence which only shows that the defendant is probably guilty. Probably guilty is not good enough under the law that you took an oath to uphold. What the law requires, ladies and gentlemen, what is required by law before the defendant can be found guilty is not suspicions, not probabilities, but proof. And think about that word.
you know
It's
what?
a strong word.
You know what? Hold on, girls. I take it back. It's working. This could work. For just a second, my brain paused on what he said. Here, listen to this. Watch this again. Listen to it again. Watch this.
We don't suspicions, not liars, ladies and gentlemen. What is required by law
Listen.
before the defendant can be found guilty is not suspicions, not probabilities, but proof. And think about that word. It's a strong word. We don't pay enough attention to that word. Proof. That's a powerful word. Proof of the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
Okay. Beyond a reasonable doubt. This is where people they doubt themselves. This is a technique used by abusers to make you gaslight yourself into thinking you're wrong. And it's working subconsciously in the back of my head. I'm like, oh, I know this feeling. I know this feeling of saying, oh, wait, beyond a reasonable doubt. Like, would I be, if gun to my head, could I say what happened? Oh, so now he's going to cause anxiety in the jurors. And now they're going to start to question themselves and go, wait, well, we weren't there and technically we don't know. And now it's going to spit, it's going to eat at them. And now they're going to be like, oh, I don't want to send a man to jail who might be innocent. Like, it's really easy to get a human being to change their mind very quickly or to doubt themselves enough to be like, I don't know. Oh, he's good, but he's bad. Ooh, he's good, but he's bad. Ooh.
That's the law. Probably not enough. That's the law. Again, visual learner, I have a chart to help you with this. This chart summarizes page 2 in a more simple way. State's burden, it's their burden, right? We talked about they brought the charge. Make no mistake, this is not Errol Koenig versus Gerhard Koenig. This is the state of Hawaii versus Gerhard Koenig with their resources, the police force, their computer experts, their everybody. Their burden, state of Hawaii versus him. This is their burden. If they only provide, obviously 100% you think he's not guilty, not guilty. Probably not guilty, not guilty. Possibly not guilty, not guilty.
Wow,
Maybe not.
he is going in on people's insecurities right now. He is really saying, now, okay, here's the thing. As a human being, I think it's really easy to say, oh, guilty. I think he's guilty. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, guilty. As a juror, it's probable. It's most likely. It's like 99.9% sure he's guilty. But see that just that little bit of unsureness to allow for reasonable doubt causes actual doubt, which causes people then not to vote guilty. Just like with Diddy, remember with Diddy, the guy who was interviewed, I reviewed this, so you can watch it on my channel. He said, I couldn't imagine if Cassie was really being abused that she would go back to Diddy. She looked like she liked it. She looked like she was enjoying it. And that's why the juror said not guilty. That's all he needed his own prejudice, his own his own idea about victims and how they react. Because in his head, he couldn't imagine a victim going back to an abuser. He voted that Diddy didn't do what they said he did. Even though we all saw the tapes, we saw the evidence, we know he was abusing Cassie. Now we know, to be fair, it was sex trafficking specifically because it wasn't an abuse case, right? It was a sex trafficking case, but still we knew that he was basically threatening Cassie's life. We saw on the evidence, but that's what he's aiming for. Right now, he's trying to put doubt because we don't know who these jurors are. We don't know their backgrounds. We don't know who they voted for. We don't know what they think about life. We don't know. And we know by comments on YouTube videos that some people were saying she deserved it, right? She deserved it. She cheated. And then even somebody in my chat, even though I think you were expressing anger, somebody in my own comment section said if I was cheated on, I would react XYZ. Like it would be, or even somebody in my YouTube comment said, oh, like I kind of get it if I was cheated on. And I'm like, pause. You guys cannot be thinking about killing people or getting angry or smashing someone. You know what I mean? You guys can't think, you know what I mean? Just because you were cheated on, just because you were abused. We can't go straight to murder. Hello?
Guilty, not guilty. Maybe guilty, not guilty. If you're like, maybe, maybe not. If you're left thinking, I don't really know what exactly happened. Maybe, maybe not. If you're here, not guilty.
Oh, Chad says Rico, not sex trafficking. Sorry.
Probably guilty, not guilty. That's how high the burden is. It's a safeguard against convicting innocent people. This is what you took an oath to uphold.
Yeah, I think there is proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Gerhardt is guilty. I did not see any evidence that would really cause me to doubt his guiltiness. So I would say guilty. I was waiting for the court to offer me some evidence that would help me feel less sure about that. The only thing I can say is I wasn't there, but based off of everything that I've seen, I can't see how he's not guilty, right? He's obviously guilty.
I'm going to circle back to this, but this is what you told us you would apply. Now, I'm going to go through more of the law later, but just very quickly, the law on attempted murder, the elements are on page 14. Page 14. Before we go through the evidence, page 14. Second paragraph. A person commits the offense of attempted murder in the second degree if he intentionally engages in conduct which, under the circumstances as he believes them to be, is a substantial step in the course of conduct, intended or known to cause the death of another person. That his intentions was to kill her. That was his intentions all along. That's what they have to show. It goes down, paragraph 1, the elements. The defendant intentionally engaged in conduct. And 2, the conduct under the circumstances as the defendant believed them to be was a substantial step in the course of conduct intended or known to be practically certain by the defendant to cause the death of Ariel Coney. That's what they have to prove, more than maybe, more than possibly, more than probably. That his intention and his knowledge was practically certain he was going to kill her.
Definitely. There's just no way. There is no evidence that he was ever going to stop hitting her. We only have proof and eyewitness testimony that it looked like he was carrying out a crime. We have no reason to doubt that Ariel would have been dead. There's just no way. I cannot even imagine a reality where she wasn't going to die that day.
That's what they have to prove. We'll come back to this. There is an instruction on self-defense. I'm going to talk about that at the end after we go through the evidence. They are the included offenses. I'll walk you through those as well. But let's now look at the evidence.
I know Chad says I fear for our sanity watching a non-guilty verdict. I swear to God, guys. And look, don't spoil it for me, okay? I'm going to try not to be spoiled, though it probably will happen because of the news. But it's going to happen today. They're going to do the verdict today, allegedly. The stream title, he says so. But I won't see it till tomorrow. I'm not ready, right? Right, Chess says, are the nurses going to testify? I already actually reacted to that. If you guys haven't seen the whole series, I have it on a playlist, and you can watch all the parts I reacted to. The 2 nurses already did testify.
And it'll be clear there is just massive amounts of reasonable doubt. So the first thing, 1 second here. This issue about, was this planned? Okay, was this planned? This big plan, he just went through this motive that Gerhardt Koenig, you got to know him, that he came up with this plan in late December that it was going to be cheaper to kill her than divorce her. What is this plan? Let's look at the evidence. Is there a reasonable doubt about that? Let's walk you through that. First of all, she brought up the idea of going on a trip to Oahu. That was her idea. Why would that be the plan? If you're planning on killing somebody, you're an anesthesiologist, you have access to, as they fault him for being a doctor, I'm going to get into that a little later, having these things at home that he uses to save people's lives, that your plan is, let me not stay on Maui, where there's probably 800,000 less people, and more secluded areas. Let me sneak syringes through TSA onto an airplane, come to the busiest island there is in Hawaii, million people, go to a place, a trail, a parking lot I've never been to, that I'm not familiar with, and in broad daylight, 4 minutes from a very busy parking lot, I want to try and kill her. That's the plan. That makes absolutely no sense. Logic, reason, common sense. Why would you do that? The life insurance issue.
Why do husbands ever kill their wives? Why do husbands ever kill their wives instead of getting a divorce? Sir, he's like, jury, there's no common sense here. Why would he kill his wife? What? Why would that happen? What do you mean?
Well, this is the busy parking lot. So, I apologize. You saw this in, this was the plan, to come here. With all these cars, all these people, he says 99% don't hike or whatever. He didn't know that. He put in here, this is the plan, according to them, that he's going to come to this unknown place with all these people, all these cars, and try to kill his wife instead of just doing it on Maui. That's the plan, according to them. The life insurance issue. Now, this shows two things. I mean, we're going to get into later about how he told her about it that morning, and she learned that morning if something happened to him, she would get $1.5 million. But it's relevant in another way. If in December and January and February, you're planning to kill your wife, why are you going through the process of obtaining $1.5 million on your life for her? That's not the sign of somebody plotting to kill somebody. That's a sign of somebody trying to work on, okay, look, we got to figure this out for our kids, and if something happens, there's, He's not planning to kill her. Now, the birthday card. He writes this morning. It's the only time she got emotional because she knows it was genuine. And I'm going to talk about that more later. He writes this. There isn't an obstacle in this world too hard for me to fight through for you. I would take on anything just to see your smile. You're one of the kindest, most giving, and selfless people I know. Selfless people I know. Putting others before yourself. So much love. You're the heart of our family. Fun, fearless, and a terrific mom. The kids and I hit the jackpot with you. He meant that. You don't write a letter like this because if you're planning to kill somebody 2 hours later. There was no plan. There was no plan. The Fed reservation. He made a reservation to go to dinner that night. He's not planning on killing anybody. There was no plan. This is from that day. They're having a great trip. They had gone through some rough times, but they were making some progress. In part because they weren't really talking about it. And that's why she felt comfortable. I'm not saying she was trying to hook up with Miller again. She wanted to travel for work. And that's why she felt comfortable bringing, hey, we've been making progress, but, I got to travel for work, And then she says, my mom can come with me. That's what Garrett told you about. So this is them on the trip, the day before. This so-called big plan. There was no big plan. Now, why are they committed to saying that there was this pre-plan and financial motive? Well, because of course, it makes no sense anyone would have syringes on this hike unless this thing was pre-planned from earlier. So they have to stick to that, even though it makes absolutely no sense. There was no plan. And I gotta tell you, I gotta tell you.
Oh, he's going to tell us, guys. He's going to tell us.
When they get into the fact that in like December or whenever it was, there's a text.
Is this a story time? Homie, is this a story time? Are you a streamer? Is this a TikTok? He's like, back in December, whatever it was,
Message where she's like, are you coming home soon? And he's like, this lady just got hurt on a hike and a rock fell on her, so I'm trying to like save her life. The fact that
my Discord is like, does he have an influencer accent? Bro, this man loves TikTok. He definitely does kind of sound like an influencer, like, sir. Okay, so that's the difference too, right? Like the Hawaii lawyer was very like, matter of fact, just like to the point, just like Ariel's testimony, right to the point. Earhart, his lawyer, very theatrical, very theater kid, very like for the TikTok.
They're trying to say that at that time, the light bulb went on in his head and he was like, I got it. I can kill her on a hike with a rock.
Objection.
I mean, that's
You dropped it
ridiculous.
early, man.
That's
Okay.
ridiculous.
And move to strike. Granted. That's argument.
Granted, strike.
Okay, well, that's what he was pointing out.
Objection against improper
Oh.
argument. Sustain.
Oh, eat him. Oh my God, this man really is theater. He really is theater.
Sustain.
I'm shook.
The idea that he came up with this plan because he was trying to save a patient's life who was hurt with a rock on a hike is ludicrous. So, ladies and gentlemen, as much as they want to avoid it, as much as they try to talk about witnesses and corroborations, the reality is this. What happened on the mountain before the hikers got there, it is essentially, she said,
My chat's like, he's like, chat, I'm cooked. Am I cooked, chat? Bro, he is giving that energy. I in my head, I didn't say it earlier, girl, but I was like, what are you, Jake Paul, bro? What are you, a fucking tick? Like, he literally is giving influencer. He just like, I fully expect him to be like, I was in the chat, bro, for this judge. Am I right? I was in the chat for this judge. Oh my God.
The witnesses told you they didn't see much. One witness only saw one hit, the other didn't see a hit at all. One of them picks out the wrong person in the photo lineup. Okay. Everything before that, they told you they can't say what happened. They don't know how it started. It's she said, he said. Now, by the way, these witnesses who apparently stood there and stared at him for 30 seconds, looking into his deep, cold eyes, they didn't see no syringes on the ground. You know the one she said she flicked out of his hand that landed right there? They're nurses. They didn't see that because it didn't happen. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, when it's your burden of proof, it's this high, and it is she said, he said. Your she said. Better not offend logic, reason, and common sense. Better not offend be contradicted by the physical evidence. Better not be highly motivated. Better not have examples of many times where she was deceptive to the police and to you. And all of those are present with her testimony. I'm going to walk you through that. Now, logic, reason, and common sense. The bottom line is Ariel Koenig is not reliable. She's not reliable. We talk about credibility. The question is reliability. Okay? Logic, reason, and common sense. We don't ask you to leave that at the door. We want you to bring that in here and look at what was said. Let's look at what she said, right? I mean, basically she's saying she wouldn't take the selfie, and then he was like, I'm tired of this shit. Let me throw you off the cliff. And then he tries to stab her
I'm tired of your shit.
with a syringe, and he's loading it first, and then he bashes her up to 10 times. That's her story. Okay. First of all, the way she describes it makes it sound like he had multiple arms, like an octopus. She says that she's
No. He explains it like she has multiple arms like an octopus. No.
she's he's on top of her, covering her mouth, and then he has a syringe, and then he's loading he has a vial, and he's loading it, but he's holding her down.
States the evidence.
Can we approach, Your Honor?
Okay, so now they have to approach because he's like, bro, I worked on this all night, bro. Like, my mom even went over it. She said it was like an A+, bro. Like, I really worked hard on this, and you're like kind of killing my vibe. I'm like telling a story. That's basically what he's gonna go tell the judge right now. Oh, this is the parents. Who's this? Who are these people? Are these all Gerhardt's friends, or are these just rando like journalists? These are his parents. Gerhardt. Okay.
Yeah, the inference is, why would you have a vial?
Okay, let's see.
The inference is, why would you have a vial unless you're trying to load it? He has a syringe in his hand. The other hand, he's holding her mouth. He's down on top of her, doing all of this while she's supposedly kicking and fighting. He only has 2 arms.
Can I just say something really slightly insensitive, but also just keep this in mind? This is very close to being a YouTuber. I feel so bad for Ariel. Because like Chad is saying, imagine being the victim, knowing he tried to murder you and you're hearing this horrendous explanation. This happens all the time in social situations, friend groups, workplaces, YouTube places. Imagine knowing you're innocent and you're watching 20 people make a video about you and you're like, and that's why like you have to be very careful. That's why I try very hard as a YouTuber to be very careful about what I say about people. And I mean, to clarify like what I'm asking a question, when I'm not asking a question, when I'm not sure. Because like real people are going to see these videos and they're going to be impacted, you know?
And in the middle of it, they're having a full conversation. Your mom's not going to be very happy if you do this. You know, the kids aren't going to be, you know, her story makes no sense. Now, logic, reason, and common sense, as we look at her story, and it is a story, okay? If we look at her story, if this was a big plan that someone's going to bring a syringe to incapacitate somebody and stab them to make it easier to throw them off the...
Well, here's the question. The problem is that Gerhardt already told us that he's a thinker. He's a planner. He's strategic. He's meticulous, right? When it comes to doing finances, he's very good with technology. If he's not the kind of guy who thinks ahead, then why did he get the WhatsApp messages on his computer? Why did he make sure that he could stalk her and harass her and obsess about her, right? And why did he reach out to all these people? Like he told us in his own testimony, hey, I'm very good at planning. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I'd like to think I'm good at planning, but I'm not good at, that much. I'm not 4D chessing over here. He was 4D chessing. He literally bragged about how good he is at finding out things he wants to know. So, I don't know, kind of follows through that he would then plan this hike and plan the syringe and plan evading police and plan a murder, and sounds like he's a good planner.
the cliff.
Yeah, and the SIM card removal is even more hard evidence. Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we even doing here?
Don't you think they would load the syringe ahead of time? Don't you think they would load the syringe ahead of time? Their story is that he's that's the plan, and in the middle of it, he's like, oh wait, I gotta take out this vial and get it ready. That makes
Well, I mean, in his defense, just because he's a good planner doesn't mean he's perfect. He thought he was going to push her off the cliff. And then when that went sour or went south, then he went for the vial. And then when the vial went south, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know that he thought he needed 3 different ways to kill his wife, because I think the rock was impromptu, right? The syringe was a backup, but it was really a backup he never thought he'd have to use probably, right? And the rock was just happenstance. Like, I don't think he planned for the rock to be there. He just said, well, fuck it. If every plan I had was going, so I'm going to go for the rock, right?
no sense. Especially given the fact that it's undisputed he had just gone up the mountain by himself for 10 minutes. If he had it and wanted to use it, he could have loaded it. It makes no sense because it didn't happen. It didn't happen. The other thing, and I'm glad he brought up this thing about plan A, plan B, plan C, because it proves the point I was going to get to. Why in the world, if you bring a syringe to incapacitate someone to make it easier to throw him off the cliff, why would the syringe be plan B? It would be plan A. You would use the syringe first, and then you would throw him off. You wouldn't start the scuffle and make that, start the scuffle and then be like, oh wait, now I'm going to stab her with the syringe. That makes no sense. It makes no sense that, that's the plan. He knows if something like that happened, he's a doctor, and toxicology report would show propofol in her sting, in her blood, that this is...
Section 9 evidence.
It makes no sense that he would start the scuffle before using a syringe if that was his big plan. Because it didn't happen. This idea that she could just flick the syringe out of his hand, he's holding it tight according to her, just flicks it. None of that makes any sense. This idea about, well, he hid evidence. The rock is found right there. We don't know exactly where because HPD should have photographed it before they moved it. But why would he get rid of the syringes and leave the rock? None of that makes any sense. And then, of course, we get into him leaving her on the mountain. Leaving her on the mountain. If this is a big plan to use this hike as an opportunity to throw her off and kill her, why would he walk away and leave her there alone thinking he's going back to the car? And they're trying to say, well, all kinds of things about that. But the reality is this. If you think, even though it's not true, if he went off on his own, because if she said, well, it's too high, I'm getting a little scared, and his plan was to kill her, he wouldn't leave her. He would say, okay, you know what, that's fine, but let's just at least go over here and take a selfie and then try to throw her off, right? He wouldn't have left her for that reason. If he was planning to try and throw her, he would have stayed with her. And then her rationale, it went, to get around the idea that, undisputable, that she clearly said, when he got back, she told the detective that he said, oh, you're still here. He was surprised that she was still there. She says, well, he knew I meant I was going to go exploring in that area. Where was there to explore? We heard from witness after witness. It was you either go up or you go down. You don't go off and go exploring. That was her way to try and cover up. That it was clear he left her thinking she was going back to the car, which you wouldn't do if you had a plan to kill somebody by throwing him off the cliff.
Okay, hear me out. What if he had a plan to take her further, but obviously it didn't go to plan. So then he huffed away, not because they were just simply having a fight, but because he's like, fuck, and then hoping she would follow, but he didn't. So then he came back down. He's obviously going to act like everything's normal, right? He's not going to be like, oh, you're still here, I guess I'll murder you here. It's more like he has to play it cool. You know what I mean? Like, obviously things didn't go perfectly. Like, he had a plan, they didn't follow through, he didn't take into account she would stop hiking, which means, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there were so many elements of this where, like, it doesn't matter what his initial plan was. He couldn't account for Ariel making a different decision. He could account for the fact that she would have stopped hiking. So he had to settle for what she gave him because he already made the decision, assuming, going into that hike that he was going to kill her. So he had to settle for the location and settle for the placement and settle for what he had versus going for the ideal, right?
TSA, we've all been through it. Sharp metal syringe objects, sharp objects, not going to work. Not going to work. Logic, reason, common sense that he has this intent to kill her, but then he lets her crawl away. He lets her go down to the witnesses. Doesn't come after her. Doesn't make any sense. Her demeanor. They say, oh, she was very matter-of-fact and just told it. Ask yourself, if someone's describing what should have been the most horrific thing they've ever been through, bloody murder, someone's trying to stab you with a syringe, a monster's trying to throw you off a cliff, when you're recounting that, you might get a little emotional. Not at all. And she's not just someone who doesn't get emotional, because we saw her get emotional when we showed her the card. When she read the birthday card, she got emotional. I submit to you that was probably guilt, but whatever it was, she knew it was genuine, and she showed an ability to show emotion. That was
He's like, oh my God, she actually showed her feelings. She showed real emotion. She was a psychopath on the stand and showed no emotion. Emil was a psychopath. Gerhardt was the only one who showed real emotion. He cried.
real. The card was real. You cannot get emotional over a made-up story.
Pause. What? Hold on.
But whatever it was, she knew it was genuine, and she showed an ability to show emotion.
Habibi, she left him. Aren't you just making her case for her? Yeah, she loved him. Of course she's getting emotional. Are you saying, is he saying like she got emotional because the love was real? Yeah. That's why everything was so hard, because the man she loved was trying to kill her? Am I confused?
When we showed her the card. When she read the birthday card, she got emotional.
Yeah.
I submit to you that was probably guilt, but whatever it was, she knew it was genuine, and she showed an ability to show emotion. That was real.
No, he's saying she's guilty, and that's why she cried, because she felt bad? What?
The card was real. You cannot get emotional over a made-up story that didn't happen when you started the fight.
Yeah, I think he's like, his story doesn't make any sense to me. Chat says, you cry, you're hysterical. You don't cry, you're a psychopath. It literally, i.e. Amber Heard. Amber Heard tried to show emotion, tried to be vulnerable. People thought she cried ugly. Fake. I get it. When people cry ugly, as an ugly crier myself, it almost looks like we're faking our feelings. Yeah, people really judge how you cry. Fun fact.
No doubt. Logic, reason, and common sense. Now, Ariel's story contradicts the physical evidence. It just does. And this is a huge problem for them. And they try to come up at the last minute with, well, maybe when blocking it, her DNA got on it. But let's talk about that. Because we're talking more than probably, right? You know, he wants to say maybe blocking her DNA got on it. Maybe. Okay. But let's use our logic, reason, and common sense and look at the physical evidence. What does Scott Henderson say? The DNA guy. Generally, yeah, you could expect higher likelihood ratios with the more DNA that's present in a sample. The more DNA present in the sample, you can expect a higher ratio, yes? Generally speaking, yes. The more someone's DNA is on the sample, the higher the number. Higher the number. He then goes on, we learned from him and Amarin, that, very important.
Man, this guy is doing his steps. He's getting his steps in court. He's like, sorry guys, I'm wearing my Fitbit. I really got to get my steps in.
The rock. Swabbing from the unstained area. There was a stained area that looked like blood, and there was the unstained other side. They swabbed the blood. They tested. Of course, it's Ariel's blood. I told you that in opening statement, right? The blood side was Ariel. The unstained side, they don't test for blood. They test for human skin cell touch DNA from people holding objects, they told you, okay? The unstained...
Oh, good point. Chad said it's second degree, so premeditation isn't a factor. This is the defense way of introducing a red herring to the jury to confuse them. When he said second degree, I was like, wait, what's second degree? What's first degree? You're right. The premeditation doesn't even matter. Who cares if he had planned for it? He tried to kill her. Great point.
Side had a profile for two people, Ariel and Gerhardt. Ariel's number was 1 trillion. His was 290. Let's go back to what Henderson said. The more DNA present on the sample, you can expect a higher ratio. Yes.
Why can I hear him? I can hear the prosecutor doing ASMR in my ear.
Trillion to 290. The rock was in her hand. The DNA shows that. That blows away her whole story. That she didn't have the rock. The rock was in her hand. Her DNA is all over that. This idea, well, maybe when she was blocking it hit her, that's not going to lead to that much of her DNA on it, more than him.
Objection, speculation.
If he's holding the rock the whole time and she's just blocking, there's going to be more of his DNA than hers. She was holding the rock, and that blows away their entire theory. Scientifically, I asked Amarin, what about scientific evidence, Miss Amarin? And we talked about it. It's unmotivated. Scientific evidence is not trying to get full custody. His retirement. It doesn't lie. It is what it is.
Huh?
And they may say, well, maybe it was there because of this. Again, maybe not. A huge reasonable doubt. She had the rock in her hand.
My chat says the way he's worked up, I feel like he's getting ready to say, if the glove don't fit, you must quit at any moment. He probably went home. He's like, Hey, ChatGPT, help me come up with great one-liners to win my case at the end. If the DNA isn't on the rock, then you must make a mockery of like the court. I don't know, something stupid. I swear to God.
1 trillion to 290.
Stupid. I'm stupid.
Now, the other thing about the physical evidence is the injuries. They want to say, we heard about the stellate laceration. I'm going to talk more about it later. But it has 1 point and it spreads, right? And you heard, she at the end said she doesn't know how many times she was hit. The doctor, Grosjean, said 2, maybe 2, I cannot say how much more. Dr. Arden says 2 to 3, okay? If she was hit 7, 8, 9 times with all his might, it would be way worse. Physical evidence doesn't support her version of events. Also,
Bro, if he really hit her that many times, she'd be fucked up way more than she was fucked up. I mean, she was fucked up, but she wasn't that fucked up. I mean, she could have really put a Band-Aid on it, like a little Band-Aid, and gone to like a restaurant after, would have been fine. But she was like so dramatic. Women, right? Dramatic. Like, oh, I'm bleeding. It's in my hair. Like, it wasn't even that bad. You feel me?
if she's
W's
under
in the
attack,
chat,
she's going to be
W's in the
scratching,
chat.
doing biting, as she says. He has no scratch marks, defensive wounds. There's no bite mark on him, even though she said she bit him. The physical evidence doesn't support her story. And that's a huge problem when it's this she said, he said, and this is your burden. That's a huge problem. Further problematic is the examples of deceptive behavior that we saw through her. Many examples of deceptive behavior that makes her unreliable. We heard about her deleting the text messages to hide it from her husband, to hide the extent of a relationship. That is inherently deceptive to do that. It showed that that's inherently deceptive. Now, the affair. Look, I'm not the morality police, okay? I'm not here saying she's an awful person because she had an affair. That's for you to decide, okay? The relevance.
Improper. Sustain.
And move to strike.
Last argument on morality is stricken from the record.
Bye, bitch.
The relevance of the affair is primarily that she lied about it to the detective. The context is showed in the relationship.
Well, she didn't lie to the detective. I just want to make that abundantly clear. She did not lie to the detective. She did not consider it an affair. Gerhardt considered it an affair. When he said, were you having an affair? She's like, no, I was not having an affair. Okay.
January, February, and December. But the relevance is she lied about it to the detective. And that is incredibly important when it is she said, he said, and it's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Let's look at this. This is, you know, he said, well, she describes it to the detective as just some flirty text messages. He says, well, there's nothing in the text message.
So then she did admit. She admitted to what she thought it was, and Gerhardt called flirty text messages affair. Fine. Okay? I definitely think it's inappropriate. I definitely think you could even say it's cheating. Would I say it's an affair? Like, would I say, like, it's a sign of her character? Or would I say, like, hey, why are you doing this? As somebody who loves their partner, their married partner, if my partner was sending flirty text messages to somebody, I'd be like, hey, looks like we have something to talk about. What's going on here? I'm glad you haven't taken it further. I'm glad it hasn't gone anywhere else. Obviously, this hurts my feelings, and I'm unsure of why it's happening. Do you understand that it's happening? Like, why are we doing this? Right? But he called her a bitch and a whore. He went to their friends and said she's having an affair. Like, his response was insane.
Messages about sex. Well, she deleted most of them, so we don't really know what's in there. But we do know what we saw. On the trip, the day before he's going to confront her, this is at 11:22 p.m., presumably Hawaii time, or maybe it's California time, whatever, but it's late at night.
It was sometime. I don't know, bros. Like, you know, it was back then. You know what? Just, like, get over it, okay? Just listen to me. I'm right. You're wrong.
Sending this to Jeff Miller.
Oh, my God. Close your eyes, guys. Oh, my God. Whoa. I'm going to have to go to confession after this.
Sending whatever, but it's late at night.
Holy
She's sending this
shit.
to Jeff Miller.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. She should start on OnlyFans if that's the kind of content she's sending to men. Holy shit.
Jeff Miller is sending
That's sarcasm, girls.
her this.
Oh,
they have
my
a nickname
God.
for Gerhardt.
Yo, was that a bestiality photo? There was
Jeff
a dog
Miller
in
is
it.
sending her this.
Oh my, is that a bestiality photo, dude? He's making a sexual face with a dog in his hand. Guilty, sustains. I'm right.
They have a nickname for Gerhard, HALEU, which is that radiology, nuclear, whatever.
Hold on. I have Halu showing up in a bit. Won't be able to talk, especially given the circumstances, just FYI. Also, do you want to keep the ASP call tomorrow or reschedule? I don't know if I'll be able to make it, but I might. Okay, again, fascinating that she felt so afraid of her husband that she had to have a safe word when he came in the room, which, by the way, I've had with my girlfriends in the past when I've been in toxic relationships. So not that uncommon. Fun fact.
They call I have hail you. They have a code word to let each other know when he's around. She's listening to an audiobook, How to Help My Spouse Heal from My Affair. That's what she's listening to. He says to her, you're engaged and continue an elaborate secret affair instead of coming to me asking to work on our relationship. And her response is, if anything, I learned how stupid it was this time and I know how to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's her response. Okay? Now, to the detective, no affair, just some flirty text messages. To you guys, no affair, just some flirty text messages. You saw 12/1, December 1st.
I think the reason this is going to play badly for people is I think most people are engaging this way in their life and they don't consider themselves cheaters. Because how many people have work husbands and work wives that they flirt with every day, but nothing's happening? So to them, I think to most people, they're going to be like, oh, shit, I'm doing this. This is how I talk to my friends. That's how I felt. I was like, oh, well, I don't know. These text messages are kind of PG, bro. You're going to have to really you know what I mean? Like, this is a little tame, especially in 2026. You know what I mean? With the internet, with the way we're all talking to each other, a lot of the general conversations some of us are having, like, they'd be considered rated R to some of these people, but they're not even. So, I think for a lot of us, we're going to see those messages and be like, I don't know. I don't know.
All day long on a Sunday. Good morning. All day long, good night. And that's how she says it to the detective.
Not one dick pic, chat says, not one dick pic, not one, I want to be with you, okay? Not one, I'm leaving my husband for you. Not one, none of it. Talk about football and music, and it's like...
was misrepresenting, deceptive, lying to the detective. Further examples of deceptive behavior is what she does with her primary care doctor and the records. After the fact, she tells her primary care doctor in an email can you add traumatic brain injury? I want to make sure the documentation is consistent between my care at Queens back here in Mount. And that's the important part. Why is that important? Because, number one...
Okay, dude, just because I go to my doctor, I'm like, hey, bro, can you write that I had a broken neck on my paperwork? My doctor's not going to be like, bet. Why does he think that it doesn't... What does it matter if she requests it? What does it fucking matter? You're so stupid. Do you think patients go to their doctors and be like, hey, can you put this on my paperwork? And doctors are like, yeah, sure. What? Why does this matter?
The Queen's records. The Queen's records doesn't mention traumatic brain injury. Arden told you that, the two docs. Don't you think if traumatic brain injury was in her Queen's records, they would have asked Grosjean or Carlton Whitney that? It wasn't in there. So this shows she is not just asking the primary care doctor to do this, she's deceiving the primary care doctor into believing that the Queen's record said traumatic brain injury, so the PCP will be like, oh, okay, I'll add it. It's deceptive behavior. It's incredibly misleading. Now, she says she's surprised about the work bag. She's surprised about the work bag. Oh, I didn't know, she knew he had it there.
Actually, great point from Chad as well. You said also she's not the one on trial for attempted murder. Just because Gert is arguing that his actions were self-defense instead of attempted murder, they're getting off track for me. And not only that, but people were pointing out that it's not him versus her. It's the state of Hawaii making the argument that he tried to murder Ariel. So going after her character and proving that she's a bad person and going after all of this stuff is turning the trial into Ariel's on the stand. And people felt like that was really unfair because hey, why are you questioning her? She's the one. And it's because that's what he's saying. They're saying, so the state of Hawaii is dude, he's the murderer. And he's saying, no, she's the murderer. And it's okay, but she's not even on the stand.
She knew there was syringes and vials in there. She calls her attorney. And then they turn it in and say, oh, surprise, look what I found. She knew it was there. She knew it was there. She lied about that. She lied about her affair. She lied to her primary care doctor. There is I really like quotes. So there's an author, famous author, by the name of Samuel Clemens. Most of us know him better as Mark Twain. Mark Twain was giving a speech once to some young people about the dangers of being untruthful. And what he said was, you ought to be very careful about lying. Because once caught, you can never again be, in the eyes of the good and the pure, what you were before.
Objection to improper argument. Overruled.
What the fuck was that? Overruled? Wait, sustained, overruled? What does that mean? Wait, what?
Can be, in the eyes of the good and the pure, what you were before.
Objection to improper argument. Overruled.
You guys come in here, you give people the benefit of the doubt. They come in here, you say, I'll hear them out. And then they lie about different things, they deceive. In the eyes of the good and pure, of all of you, you can't look at her the same again. It's dangerous.
Oh my
It's
God.
dangerous.
I hope this man sleeps on a warm pillow for the rest of his life. I hope for the rest of this man's life when he is sleeping, there are sounds of annoying crickets outside of his window that do not sound like ASMR, but actually sound like creepy crawlies trying to get through his front door. I hope for the rest of this man's life, he never sleeps a full 8 hours. Oh my God.
If she's going to manipulate her PCP, doctor, if she's going to be deceptive to the detective, do you think for a second she would hesitate to be that way with you? And then we get into bias interest motive. We talked about this. How she knew a divorce was coming. She wanted full custody, how they're using these allegations against him to get full custody, to make it where he can't ever see his kids again. To get half his retirement. To get all...
Pause. Habibi, with peace and love, I don't know how to tell you this. His son doesn't want to see him ever again. His son says his father confessed to murder. Don't they understand? Even if he wins this case, how is Emil ever going to believe? Because Emil knows. Emil said his father, to his FaceTime face, said, I tried to kill Ariel. Do you think his relationship is about to be repaired all of a sudden because the court decided? Even if the court doesn't find him guilty, does this man literally think his kids are going to be like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're good now? Like, absolutely not.
The house, things that she might not get. She knows that. She said to you that their statement is, we want full custody, but if depending on the outcome of the case, that can be revisited later. She knows the ramifications. Now, let's compare that to Mr. Gerhard, Dr. Gerhard Koenig. You got to see him. Trust your gut. Trust what you know about people. Is he some...
You can't say trust your gut, trust what you know about people. Also go by the evidence. Which one is it? Is it trust my gut or go by the evidence? He can't say that.
somebody that is a monster that came up with this plan to stab his wife?
What?
What do you know about people? Is he somebody that is a monster that came up with this plan?
Okay, not to be that girly, but my gut says, yeah, he a murderer. My gut says, my intuition says, what I know about people, that man is a murderer. So, you know, based off the evidence and based off my gut, guilty.
And to stab his wife and throw her off a cliff? Is that the sense you got from him? Or was he a hurt human being struggling with infidelity but trying his best? You know, they talked about his parents, how they moved from South Africa when he was young. He worked really hard to become a doctor. He talks about, oh, she was trying to control everything about her. All of this awful controlling guy. What does she say? Prior to December, you generally describe your...
Now, hold on, chat. I know you're a philosophy channel, but by God, you are entertaining, girl. Well, hey, whoever said philosophy can't be entertaining? Fun fact, the philosophy boys, they used to just sit around like a podcast all day and really just yell at each other. So honestly, if you can't do philosophy and be entertaining, is it even philosophy?
Marriage is good, right? Yes, sir. This is what Ariel said. You don't describe your marriage as good if somebody is a controlling, coercive, violent...
Wait, hold on. Excuse me?
Prior to December, you generally describe your marriage as good, right? Yes, sir. This is what Ariel said. You don't describe your marriage as good if somebody is a controlling, coercive, violent...
Okay, so this is issue covered. Prior to generally, you describe your marriage as good, right? Yes, sir. I think that's why I'd love to know what she was telling her friends, because a lot of people describe their marriages as good because they're embarrassed. They don't want to admit it's abusive. I mean, we just saw this man on stream. Like, okay, this streamer, actually, this is a good example. The streamer who's on Twitch, who is allegedly he hit his girl 1-2 on stream. Okay, it's technically a little bit out of frame. So there's just enough room for doubt. But then she shows up on stream to say, guys, he would never hurt me. I'm 9 months pregnant, whatever, with a black eye. So then it's like, what's that? And she goes, oh no, it's just a shadow from the camera. Okay, So yes, we didn't technically see him hit her, but we did see his elbow go up and his hand go like this, and we did see his body movement, and we did hear a sound, and she said ouch afterwards. But right in front of our faces, right to our faces, he is trying to play like he didn't hit her. And then he's trying to come up with all these stories about how, oh, they didn't have it. She is describing to us that she's in a good marriage. You know what I'm saying? We have to use the evidence to come to a conclusion, even regardless of Ariel saying her marriage was good. Okay, girl, I'm glad you feel that way. Also, he tried to kill you with a rock. So even if she, Ariel, says my marriage was good prior to December, okay, maybe it was. But also, maybe she wasn't given a safe space to really be honest about how she felt about it. Or maybe she was actually, maybe her friends will say, nah, you've been telling me that it's been hard. And it's, how many of my girlfriends, they'll be like, oh yeah, our relationship's okay. I'm like, you're calling me every week crying. You know how many of the men in my life get mad at me when I'm like, hey, you're in a bad relationship and you're treating this girl badly? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, bro, every time you call me, bro, you're telling me all these like infidelity stories or all these abuse stories or all these like cry stories. She's cheating, you're cheating, they're cheating, everybody's cheating. Like, hello? Like, but if you ask them, they would describe their relationship as good. You know what I mean? So I don't, it doesn't matter if both of them think their marriage was good. Was it? Because it's kind of hard to believe that.
And in person. There's a lot embedded in this. You don't describe it as a good marriage if somebody's, unless they're a good dad. Look, domestic violence is horrible. There's some awful men out there that use their power, control, financial means to control women.
When Trump goes, he goes, I would never do this. I would never rape anybody. But if I did, she wouldn't be the chosen one. I would never do this. It's so evil. But if I did rape somebody, she would definitely not be the chosen one. You know what I'm saying? That's what he said. That's what he literally said. The president of the United States, a grown-ass man accused of rape, said, if I did, she wouldn't have been the chosen one. This is like when OJ was acquitted, and then he wrote the book, If I Did It, This Is How I Would Do It. Men men.
In improper ways. This is not him. That's not him. She wouldn't say it was a good marriage if he was like that. His version of events, they fault him for wanting to see her phone and things like that. The audiobook said that's what it takes. This is Ariel. I asked you earlier, you understood the audiobooks you're listening to by these professionals, it says to give up privacy, give up access, get them to trusting us. She says yes. They're faulting him for the professional advice, what is said. He's not trying to deprive her of her career. He's trying to stop her from seeing the guy that she had an affair with. He was fine with her getting another job.
I mean, to be fair, you can't actually stop someone from cheating. They actually have the legal and free right to cheat. So actually trying to stop her from cheating is controlling behavior. You cannot stop your partner from cheating. So him trying to stop her is a confession of control. She's an adult. What are you going to do? Hold her hostage? You can't do that. It might be immoral to cheat, but you can't actually stop her from cheating.
That's a very human thing. Why would you be okay with her going back to work with the guy that she had an affair with? Now, he went into detective mode when he found out about the affair. That's a very human reaction. Very human. He was on the computer looking up Reddit and infidelity and getting some advice. It's not easy when your partner cheats on you. He's struggling with it. They're making some progress in January and February because counseling, she turns it not about the affair, but about other issues. But they're making progress. They're kind of heading in a good direction. They go on this hike.
Wait. Prior to December, the marriage was good. December, okay, so the cheating, but then they went to therapy, and then in therapy, she admitted that they had problems in their divorce prior. Go fuck yourself. Wait, no. She stated in court that the marriage was good before December, but then why, when in therapy, she admitted the marriage had problems? Isn't that's the point? Is that like, sure, prior to, like, I would have described my marriage as good, And also, when we got to therapy, we found out there were so many problems. You know what I'm saying? Like, both of these things can be true, but he's trying to paint it like she never had a problem with their marriage ever, and then just admitted that in therapy, it became like all the problems Ariel had in the marriage because there were so many.
And it makes sense that at that hike, she brings up this issue. Again, not that I want to be with Miller, but hey, I got to travel for work. Okay, I got to travel for work. And this is a detail that you just can't make up, right? He says, then when they're fighting about it, she said, well, my mom can come with me to chaperone.
Great. Love a mommy.
He leaves her because they got into a fight, not because she's afraid of heights. She goes on all kinds of bungee jumping hikes all the time. He comes back and he's like, oh, you're still there. He described to you what happened.
No. Chat's saying his lawyer's using his testimony of good. No, he's using Ariel's testimony of good. We just read it. It says Ariel, right? She says it was good. And he said, why would she describe her marriage as good? Right? That was her testimony. I don't think it was Gerhardt's. I think it was hers. I just read it, right? That was his? The prosecutor's statement was so clear and concise and logical. Let's see. Hold on. We're at 336.
She wouldn't say it was a good.
No, it says Ariel, guy. I'm sorry. You're wrong. It literally says right here, A for Ariel. Right? Question. Oh, answer. Oh, question and answer. Wait, okay, so you know this is an issue of discovering these items prior to December. Generally, you describe your marriage as good, right? Ariel's testimony. Sorry, right here. Oh, you're looking at me. I'm stupid. Ariel's testimony. Sorry, guys. It says it right here. This is Ariel's testimony. Right? So this is what she was saying. She said it was good. Okay.
She goes on all kinds of bungee jumping hikes all the time. He comes back and he's like, oh, you're still there. He described to you what happened. He's not saying, oh, he grabbed me and pulled me down. The scuffle started on this mountain trail and they ended up on the ground. Whether they tripped or fell, whatever, he ended up on her. And then he told you how she's grabbing his testicles. And she admits to it. And then I also squeezed his testicles. That's her testimony. It was all happening so fast. You know, we spent a lot of time going through it all. That's not real life. In real life, you don't get hours to be like, okay, and then you did what? Well, why didn't you do this? Well, did you consider that? Did you consider doing this with the rock instead? It was happening in seconds, and he reacted, and he had a reflex, and that's human. That's human. That's human. He reacted. And then he felt horrible about it, and he told you about that. He never wanted to hurt her. Never. He felt terrible about it. He was shocked that he could even do that to her in that moment. He felt horrible. The physical evidence supports his story. The DNA, and I'm going to get into the medical evidence a little more in a second. You have this, which apparently might have been dirt. Undeterred, might have been dirt. You have a cut, you have bruising, right where he said he was hit. Reasonable doubt. Now, the FaceTime with Emil that they call a confession.
Okay, let's see.
There's no assurances of reliability. He explained to you what happened in that call. We need to consider it in the context in which it took place and ask ourselves, is this a reliable, thing that happened that we can rely on? Two highly emotional participants in the phone call. One is suicidal. One is thinking his life is over. He's very emotional, calling his son to say goodbye. The other, obviously, not blaming Emil at all, incredibly emotional. His grandma said she was shaking, crying. Two very, very emotional people. Then you look at the environmental factors. He's on the side of a cliff. And they made it a point to get the detective, the HPD officer says, very windy over there, notoriously windy. Very, very windy day, according to the police. He's on speakerphone on the side of a cliff, talking. And he told you what he did. He was explaining to her, look, she was having this affair, she got hurt, this is her blood, she crawled away or got away, she crawled away, and she said, I tried to kill her. He was telling her that's why he was going to end his life.
Yeah, so now Chad said now his client is unreliable. So yeah, everybody is unreliable in the testimony. So so everyone, it's just, how's this gonna work?
He wasn't confessing. He was telling her that's why I'm going to end his life. Now, we know this is his testimony. So as you see here today, there's parts of the exact wording and timing of what was said that you don't quite remember exactly verbatim, word for word, correct? He said yes.
So like everyone's emotional, so if everyone is emotional, is nobody telling the truth? Is there no way? Like the evidence, it's so interesting. This is real court. This is the land of the free and justice. And isn't this amazing? Are you guys like putting that together? Are you letting it embody and sink into you that this is also how innocent people end up in prison? Because like this is how we do things and we have to rely on a jury of our peers. And We have to trust that these people are showing us the right evidence. And like, we're really watching like real life happen in front of us. Wow.
He cannot tell us exactly word for word what was said. And then we have an example of him making assumptions. He first tells the detective, oh, my dad said he tried to push her off the cliff. That's what he assumed. Not blaming him, that's what he assumed. But later on in the conversation, in the interview, the detective asked you about that, and he clarified, he said, the part about her pushing her off the cliff was what you assumed he meant, not what he actually said correct. He said, oh yes, correct. So we have an example already of him saying something that he assumed that wasn't accurate. He wants to say, it was so clear at the end of his redirect, he said, without a doubt, I know what was said. Do you recall how he had to try 4 times? The first 3? Emil said, yeah, I was confused. I'm kind of confused. And he asked again, yeah, I'm kind of confused. Yeah, I'm kind of confused. And finally, Emil...
Wait. It was because is he talking about when the prosecutors were kind of asking that question wrong? Because Emil didn't quite get it because of the way he was asking it? But he was only confused because of the sentence structure. Because if the way the guy was asking... It wasn't because Emil was confused. Emil was not stupid. He was just like, hey, bro, you're saying it weird. Can you say it correctly? And I'll answer it. And once he did, he answered it. He's making us doubt Emil's like ability to understand, but like he understood perfectly fine.
Understood what the prosecutor wanted him to say and agreed. I'm not faulting Emil at all. Okay, this was a misunderstanding. The second call shows that. Gerhard calls the second time and he wasn't saying, why'd you rat me out? He was saying, wait, what? You told Ariel's parents I tried to kill her? Oh, like, I gotta go. And he was gonna go kill himself again. This idea that he wasn't giving Ariel a blow-by-blow Emil a blow-by-blow what happened. He was trying to say goodbye to his son. This is not a confession they're making it out to be. I just point out to you, it's not his fault. He's lived with Ariel the last year. He wants to be on Maui. He likes it here. He knows the only way he can stay here is living with her. We talked about her and her actions with the detective and the primary care doctor.
So now he's saying the only reason is he insinuating that Emil is siding with Ariel because he knows like that's the only way he can live in Maui? Wait, rewind.
Wants to be on Maui. It's not his fault. He's lived with Ariel the last year. He wants to be on Maui. He likes it here. He knows the only way he can stay here is living with her. We talked about her and her actions with the detective and the primary care doctor.
Oh.
He understood what the prosecutor wanted him to say after the 4th try.
I hope this man, every time he puts on his shoe in the morning, it feels like there's a pebble or a rock at the bottom of his foot. I hope that every time when this man tries to get an Uber, it cancels on him. I hope every time this man leaves the house and it rains, he's not prepared for it. Oh my God. Oh my God. You know exactly why there was a misunderstanding during that moment. You know exactly why there was a misunderstanding. Oh my God. I hope this man for the rest of his life gets halitosis. I hope when he brushes his teeth, it doesn't even matter. People can still smell him when he comes into the room.
This was not a confession. Gerhard's actions...
To those suffering with halitosis, I love you and I'm so sorry. Okay, but this
after
man...
the incident, they want to say it's consciousness of guilt. I say it's proof he's human. He went into a deep despair. He couldn't believe that he could cause that kind of harm to the person that he loved. And that can coexist with defending himself in the moment, in that reaction. He felt horrible about it. He went into where he was suicidal.
He's basically saying like Emil and Ariel, they're not exactly working together, but Emil is such a horrible kid. He'd rather see his dad go to prison for murder than to leave Maui. Sir.
What he was saying to Emil on the phone was, I gotta go, I don't want the police to find me, is because he wanted to keep open the option of killing himself, which was...
I know, Chet says I want to see the jury. I want to see the jury so badly. I want to know who they got up there, what their ages are, what they look like. I want to know how many men, how many women, how many they, thems. I want to know I want to know everything on that. Oh, I want to know.
Turning to be harder than he thought. He didn't want to get caught at that time because he was still thinking about jumping and killing himself. He wasn't evading the police for the purpose of, I don't want to get caught. He wanted to be able to kill himself and have that option.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about when he turned himself in later.
Turned himself in quotations.
And that's why he did what he did with the SIM card. He didn't want the police to find him because he was thinking about killing himself. And this idea that in the middle of this suicidal place of being super emotional.
So he's super emotional. He wants to kill himself, but he was smart enough to take the SIM card out of his phone so he wouldn't be caught by the police, tracked by his phone. So he's so distraught, he's not thinking straight. Girl, with peace and love, it would never have occurred to me to take out my SIM card. At first, when I heard he took out a SIM card, I was like, why? I don't get it. What does that do? How did he even think to do that? So he's so distraught. Oh no, I'm going to kill myself. Oh, but before I do, like, what?
That you open your SIM card, you bend a paper clip, open it, and you're gonna take the time to put it back where it was instead of just leave it over there.
Why'd you even take it out in the first place? How'd you even think to take it out? Why would you even think to take it out? Wouldn't it have made more sense for him to throw his phone or something? Or to like ditch his phone? If he was like so suicidal, why would he even care about his phone? But I don't understand anything about that.
It shows he's human that he felt terrible about this. He told you how bad he felt. And that can coexist with self-defense. Now, this idea that he was fleeing from the cops, first of all, the officer didn't say we pulled up right next to him. Very clearly they said we pulled up, there was a lane in between us, and he was on the grassy area. This grassy area right here. They said he was here when they got out of the car and he started to flee, and remember? And I said, come on, how the heck was he not going to get in the bushes if that were the case? And then, shockingly, the prosecutor asked him, well, you played D1 football, right, officer? I mean, the fastest man in the world, Usain Bolt, the Olympic sprinter from Jamaica, could not get to him from the car if he's trying to get into the bushes.
What?
Look, I get it. Officer safety. Look, I'm not faulting them. They came in hot. They're the strategic enforcement detail. Apparently, you got to be 300 pounds to be in it. I get it. They think he has a syringe. Okay? They come in hot. They couple strikes. Don't hit him in the face and arrest them. I'm not faulting them for that. I don't know about this. Saying he was trying to flee. Okay, that's not cool. Okay, but I get it. Officer safety.
Look, okay, I'm not even saying he was never suicidal, because it actually is pretty common for men to kill their whole family than to kill themselves. It's called a murder-suicide. I wouldn't be that surprised. They just had a case recently where a man killed his wife, and I think somebody else, and then drove out to a place and started a shootout with cops, and before they finished it, he killed himself. So I'm not saying he was never suicidal. I'm saying suicide is a very interesting word here. I don't think he was suicidal in the way that they're saying. I think he was like, I'm going to go out on my own terms, which is different from mental health suicide, where you're pushed into a corner and you feel like you have no choice. He was going to kill himself, which I think by definition people think of as suicide. But the way they're manipulating the use of that word is to say, I was so mentally distraught I had to kill myself, which I would argue I doubt. I would argue he was going to kill himself, but it wasn't mental health suicide. That's why I call things like suicide, chosen death, you killed yourself. I think we should separate these things into categories because they explain why you did it, right? Like, we should save people from killing themselves, suicide, because they feel pushed into a corner. We should hold people accountable who decide to kill themselves so they're not held accountable, right? And then we should separate people who are ready to die from, because they seek out the proper intervention, they have chronic illnesses, whatever, right? So the idea that he was going to kill himself isn't that weird to me, because many men kill their families and do that. I just think it's interesting that they're trying to spin this to be not only self-defense, but mental health. That's the part that is unbelievable to me. Unbelievable.
He has an injury. Look at this. It's dry blood and it's bruising. It's the kind of purple bruising that takes place hours later. When you first get an injury, it doesn't bruise. This happened earlier. Dry blood, purple bruising. That takes time to get to that point.
Can he say that? I guess so. I mean, isn't there a doctor who can tell us if that's true?
A theory in search of facts.
Oh, we should ask Gerhard. He's a doctor, right? It's a wee bit of a joke, isn't it?
Talk to you guys about this. To try and use a computer to manufacture financial motive without telling us last week that sometimes, I'm sorry, how much time is that? Thank you. That sometimes the computer opens files and shows it was accessed. Don't you think that would have been fair to tell you guys that? Instead of leading you to believe that 100% Gerhard looked at all of these things? Look, make no mistake.
Pause. Let me rewind that.
Files and shows it was times. I'm sorry, how much time is that? Thank you. That sometimes the computer opens files and shows it was accessed. Don't you think that would have been fair to tell you guys that? Instead of leading you to believe that 100% Gerhard looked at all of these things? Look, make no mistake. He said 80% of it he looked at. He's not hiding that. He's just, when he's up here saying, like, I don't remember at 3 a.m. looking at a 2018 Amex credit card statement that was in my old divorce file. And, but undeterred. It shows he had a financial motive. He was looking up how much his divorce costed him in the past. What? He makes a lot of money as a doctor.
Humble brag, guilty, sustained, verdict, something. You can't humble brag on the stand, bro. My boy makes a lot of money. My boy, filthy rich. My boy go to the strip club once a week. He throw dollar bills at booty every night, girl. He's rich. Bro, W in the chat, bro, for my boy who's rich.
The search terms: kill, push, shove, syringe. They're looking for the smoking gun. He ever had it with his computer. Looking for a smoking gun. What did they find? No smoking gun. Just some search about hikes that you would search if you were truly just going on a hike. Again, maybe, maybe not. They were looking for a smoking gun. They don't find it, so what do? They manufacture a motive, undeterred, theory in search of facts. Oh, no smoking gun. But you know what? It shows. He's looking at financial documents. He has a financial motive. That's not fair. I submit to you that whatever they found on that computer, they would find some way to spin it. Whatever they found, they would find some way to spin it.
I like that he says it's not fair. It's not fair.
That's not fair. The work bag. The work bag. And this, I gotta say, he uses these tools and materials to save lives. And they want to fault him for having it?
Except his wife's life. So he took an oath to save lives, except the life of his wife. And except when two other people came and saw him in the situation, instead of asking for help, he ran away. Instead of asking and pleading for them to call the cops or an ambulance, instead of carrying an ounce, he ran away and then was going to kill himself.
He's a doctor. He talked to you about why he has it on Maui. Not on Oahu. He uses these things to save lives, not try and somehow poison his wife. And she knew he would take it from work every day. Now, self-defense, first thing you got to decide is whether or not this was deadly force that he used. We know it wasn't, and we're going to get into that in a second. But it doesn't matter either way because it's the same rock that she hit him with. So even if it was, even if you say it was deadly force, it was the force that was used against him. So it doesn't matter. It's the same rock. The only thing it does say about it, and this is the part that was incomplete, about the duty to retreat. It says, the use of deadly force is not justifiable if the defendant knows he can avoid the necessity of using such force with complete safety by retreating. You only have to retreat if you can do so safely. She's holding on to his testicles, hitting him. And it just talks about being reasonable. He used the same force that she used against him. And they want to say, well, look at the difference. How could it be the same rock? Obviously, if one gets hit cleaner than the other, the same rock can do that. You know, like I could throw something at a baseball at someone's head, and one it hits him in the face, and one it hits him in the arm. It's going to come in.
Like, would it make sense? Okay, yeah, Chet says, why would you even kill yourself if you're defended yourself and you're the victim? Yeah, what if Ariel got on the stand and was like, guys, I was going to kill myself. He hit me in the head with a rock so many times, and my first thought was like, I should kill myself. My life is over. How does that even make sense? Why would Ariel kill herself? Why would Gerhard kill himself? Like, what was even the logic of my life is over, I'm going to kill myself? What do you mean your life is over? Two people just came and rescued you. What do you mean? Like, in that moment, those two people could have rescued whoever the victim was. It doesn't make any sense for anyone to kill themselves if they're the victim.
Cause, obviously it can be depending on how the direction, how hard the landing was. He stopped. He didn't keep going. What amount of force was used? We know. Like I said earlier, we know what Ariel says she doesn't know. I don't know the exact number. They are downplaying what she said because they know it doesn't make sense. They're saying, oh, up to 10 times. So what does that mean? 6, 7, 8, 9? Doesn't mean 2. But now they know that doesn't make sense. She was hit 8, 9 times. And, oh, maybe she meant less. She doesn't know. Grosjean says possibly 2, maybe more. I cannot tell you. Arden says 2 to 3. He says 2. Grosjean talks about, oh, there's rock in there, or dirt. He's not a forensic pathologist. He didn't test the material to show like what it was. You know, her condition after. You saw her walking. She's walking on the hill. Okay. But more importantly, this is her talking after. And I'm going to ask you to do something with me now. If you could help me out here. Either close your eyes or don't look at the screen and just listen to her voice.
works for TMG at Maui Memorial Medical Center. TMG is called it.
It's Maui Memorial.
Memorial, yeah. It's what TMG's a group of anesthesiologists.
Did you guys drive here today?
Yeah.
Which is your car?
It's a Nissan Rogue.
Do you remember the license plate? If not, that's okay.
It's not our car, we live on that one.
What color is it? The Nissan.
It's like black or it's gray, it's gray. Let me just wet my mouth. I have a wet paper towel, so my mouth really works. I don't have any number here, so. Sorry, I know. No, you're an angel. Just trying to stop the bleeding until they get me. I know, I'm in 24.
What was Jeff wearing today?
Wearing like a light gray shirt and
Okay. Does she sound like she has a traumatic brain injury?
I don't know what that sounds like, actually. So I don't know. I will say she sounds really calm. She sounds really coherent. But if you're just listening, that's going to cause an assumption. And then you see the visual and you're like, holy fuck. Because like the visual matters, right?
wearing like a light.
So like the visual really matters. So it doesn't really matter. Like you can be impressed. You could say, wow, the human body is amazing. I can't believe she can remain so calm with so much adrenaline and she can communicate. Look how fucked up she is. But if you look at the visual, it brings into full picture, right? What is happening? Sure, I closed my eyes. I listened to the audio. If you guys weren't watching stream, I did keep my eyes closed. And yeah, if you're just listening, she sounds really, really calm. And then you zoom out and you see the video and you're like, holy fuck. So if anything, we should be incredibly impressed with how she was able to stay calm because, hello? Do you think she's faking that? Do you think the blood is fake? Oh my God, is the blood fake? Maybe Ariel planted blood capsules and purposely planted a makeup kit in her baggie. And when it was happening, she quickly put makeup on her face to fake her injuries. Yeah, that's it.
Gray shirt and
Okay. Does she sound like she has a traumatic brain injury to you? She sounds okay. Look, I'm not saying it wasn't a bad cut. And look, I'm not,
Oh.
Nobody
Oh.
wanted her to have that cut. I'm not saying it's not, I'm just saying the level of force he used, you can see. It was, he talks about chunks missing from his scalp. No doctor said that. It was soft tissue. You heard from Dr. Arden, very credible man, that apparently for 14 grand is going to sacrifice his integrity. Obviously, he's not going to do that. He told you the blood is not a good indication of the severity. The blood is not a good indication of severity. No skull fractures, no soft tissue. The tip of her thumb, he said, it was just the very tip. And sure, after the first hit, he puts her thumb, it hits it, just the tip is fractured. We heard about that. All three doctors agree. No substantial risk of death and no serious bodily under law. All three said that. We talked about the stellate laceration. The Glasgow coma score was 15 out of 15. Triage, they waited a few hours outside because she wasn't in that serious of a condition. She had a bad laceration. They sewed it up. She went home the next day. And again, I don't mean to. He feels terrible that happened. But he wasn't trying to kill her. That's about the amount of force that was used. Now, her eye. Let's look at this photo. The orbital is the most fragile area there is. And he said, very fragile bone. If he hit her with that rock, it would have broke bones.
So what are you saying? How did she sustain that injury? Who are you questioning Ariel or are you questioning the doctors now? Are the doctors on trial? What are you trying to say?
There was a scuffle. They landed on the ground. They're fighting. There's elbows. He's going for the rock. They're fighting for it. There's no doubt her eye got hurt in this thing. But he didn't smash her eye with a rock the way they want you to believe.
Okay, and what? What is this?
And then you have his injuries. We talked about that. Now,
I hope every time he wears a pair of socks, they feel wet. Okay? I hope every time he wears a pair of socks, he wonders, did I dip my feet into the shower and in socks and then put them in my tennis shoe?
it's the state's burden to prove to you this wasn't self-defense. More than probably. That it wasn't under the circumstances, that he reacted as a human when she was doing these things to him and hit him. They have to prove to you it doesn't apply. It was a reflex, it was a reaction, it was a human reflex and reaction to defend himself in the moment. And that can coexist with him feeling terrible about it after. This happened extremely fast, and then he stopped. Now, there's we talked about the elements of attempted murder. He had no intent to kill her. You see on the bottom, and self-defense applies. They have to disprove those two self-defense. Then there's something that takes you down to the others, right? The other offenses. If and only if you find the defendant not guilty of attempted murder, then or unable to reach a verdict, unanimous verdict, then you must consider these other included offenses. None of them apply.
He's so frustrating.
Self-defense is a defense to all of them. If you think that they didn't disprove self-defense, it goes all the way down. But you work your way down through these things.
You know what it feels like? It feels like in an ideal world, this isn't how we would do things. In an ideal world, all the experts and all the professionals would get together and put together evidence, and we would go with the evidence. There wouldn't be like, I'm trying to prove my client innocent. I'm trying to prove it would be like, let's all look at the evidence and come to a conclusion, because it does put people in a morally like compromising situation, right? That defense lawyers have to defend guilty people, that judges have to defend innocent people. Like just because somebody argued more diligently, like it just feels like a very flawed system that claims to be about justice. Like putting the hands of people's lives in the hands of people with so much bias and prejudice, instead of all of us as a society working to really fight our biases and prejudices, to sit there and say, okay, what actually happened? Like, look, and because we have a punishment system, it's harder. If we didn't have a punishment system and we didn't have this idea of like, I'm going to make you suffer, then we also wouldn't be afraid of being even found guilty in a sense, because we'd accept that in maybe some ways as a human's culture would shift over hundreds of years to accept sort of in ways like, yeah, I did this thing. And also like, there's just like so many factors that make people lie and cheat and go back. Like, we really could have had a better system, but this system is not good. It definitely is why I hate prison systems. And I don't think like justice can be had in a place where we are sitting here and arguing these things when we should just get all the professionals together. What happened? What does the evidence show? Let's be realistic. Like, this is serious. This isn't funny. This isn't a theater show. Like, her head was bashed open. What are we talking about? Like, okay, why'd you want to kill yourself? Be for real with me. There needs to be some sort of like, I almost want people to be so fucking serious, please. No wonder YouTube is the way it is. No wonder the world is the way it is. These are supposed to be the most professional adults in the world, and this is it. Do you know what I mean? Like, be so fucking serious.
I'm just going to go through it quickly because I don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, it's debate bros in court. I literally feel like I'm watching a debate bro panel on Twitch right now.
The next one is attempted assault in the first degree. That he took a substantial step in conduct intended to culminate in the commission of assault in the first degree. That he intentionally or knowingly was trying to cause serious bodily injury. Let's look at the definition of serious bodily injury. Serious bodily injury means bodily injury which creates a substantial risk of death or which causes serious permanent disfigurement or protracted loss or impairment of the function of any bodily member or organ. The doctors say she didn't have that. He wasn't trying to do that. This doesn't apply. Self-defense, no intent to cause serious bodily injury. You go on to assault in the second degree. Again, no intent to cause serious bodily injury. Self-defense applies to all of this. So you work your way through, self-defense applies to all of it. Her motive to try and get custody and conviction of...
Yeah, Chet says, was Hawaii's closing argument this long? No, I don't think so. I've been recording for 2.5 hours, and at 1 hour and 10 minutes, I think we started the defense. So I think he's been going a little longer. I think maybe he has a longer time. Maybe, I'm not sure. I can't tell, but yeah, he's been going on. He's almost done though. He asked how much time does he have left, so I think he's almost done. I think he's very almost done.
Any of these things helps her with that.
Can I do
Assault in a third degree.
for improper instruction in the law?
So, should be substantial. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the instructions of the law. That's the instruction of the law.
Then you get to assault in the third degree. Bodily
Oh, it says Hawaii reserved time for a rebuttal. Okay.
injury or negligent use of a dangerous instrument. Again, self-defense. He wasn't negligent. He was reacting. Reasonable doubt as to every one of these included offenses. So you just work your way down. And then there's something after that called a mutual affray. If this was a mutual affray. Reasonable doubt as to all of these. Now, I'm almost at the end here. I have couple more minutes. I want to end by saying a few things. This is the law. I ask you to use this as a guide to your deliberations. It's not about trying to figure out what happened. Your only goal is to answer the question, is there a reasonable doubt? Did they prove beyond a reasonable doubt this was not self-defense? more than possibly, more than probably. Let that guide your deliberations. It's a way to simplify things. After you talk about any piece of evidence, come back and remind each other, yeah, but does that prove this beyond a reasonable doubt? Let that guide your deliberations. You know, I couldn't help but think last night. When they moved here to the United States, there's these constitutional rights that we all have. They didn't know it at the time, but it was for a moment just like this. When a jury of his peers would come together and follow the law and follow through on the oath that you took. I want to end with a quote.
Oh no.
There was a politician back in the day who was giving a speech, and it was to other politicians, but I think it applies pretty well to jury service. It says, "For those to whom much is given, much is required. And when at some future date, the High Court of History sits in judgment on each of us, recording whether in our brief span of service we fulfilled our responsibilities to the state, our success or failure will be judged by the answer to 4 questions. First, were we truly men and women of courage? Second, were we truly men and women of judgment? Third, were we truly men and women of integrity? And finally, were we truly men and women of dedication?" I ask you to keep those 4 things in mind as you deliberate. Courage, to follow the law and do what's right, even if it may not be popular. Judgment.
Bro.
Judgment to see through some of these ideas that he had a financial motive, that it was cheaper to kill her. Common sense judgment. Dedication. Dedication to these principles. To these principles and our Constitution. Dedication to it. Uncompromised dedication to the presumption of innocence and reasonable doubt. Deliberate that way. Uphold your oath.
Oh my God.
Follow the law. Let
Don't tell me what to do.
this guide you. Enforce the reasonable doubt standard. Follow.
Honestly, I hope he's pissing them off. I hope he's like, I hope they are starting to get annoyed. Like he's told them this 1,000 times. We get it, bro. We're not stupid. Okay? He's literally like pissing me off. I wonder if he's pissing them off.
the law. Do these things. And integrity will be yours.
No, brother.
Thank you for your time over the last month.
Boo.
On behalf of Dr. Koenig and Manta Dirks, thank you all for your time.
Boo.
Mr. Cochran, let me just have you move visual aid. Appreciate it. State's rebuttal.
Okay, so this is the state's rebuttal now.
Mark Twain also said, "If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything." Think back to defendant's testimony. Think back to every time he was asked on cross-examination something that made him look bad, something that made him look like he had a motive, something that was incriminating. Think back to every single time the defendant was asked something like that. And what was his answer? "I don't recall." Ariel Koenig was able to sit here and testify in front of you for 3 reasons. First, she had her intuition. She saw the defendant looking at her feet on that trail. She saw the defendant tracking her every move. She saw the defendant making sure he saw where she was. And that's what made her feel uneasy. It was her intuition. Second, she fought back. She fought for her life that day. And defense wanted to characterize it as a full conversation, but it was It was Ariel begging for her life from the defendant. It was Ariel saying, think about the kids. It was Ariel saying, nobody's going to believe this was an accident. This is Ariel trying to reason with somebody who is trying to kill. And the third reason, and the most important reason that Ariel was here to testify to you, is Amanda Morris and Sarah Buxbaum hearing a call for help, going forward, looking at what they saw, and helping Ariel out. Because the evidence shows that is the only thing that stopped the defendant that day. The only thing that stopped him from continuing to beat Ariel with that rock, from continuing to hit her, from continuing to try and kill her, was Amanda Morris.
Did they ask him, did they ask Gerhard, what were you going to do after you hit Ariel? What was your next move? So the two witnesses come up. He says, in his testimony, he said, I hit Ariel, and after I stood up, I didn't even know they had been there until I looked up and I saw them. But what was going through his mind? What were you thinking? What were you going to do next? Did you have any thought of, oh my God, he said, oh, my wife was manic. Okay, what do you mean by manic? It's kind of confusing to me that he didn't tell the story like somebody telling a story, in a sense. He had the chance to be like, hey, what happened? And yeah, it just doesn't make sense the way he told the story to me. I don't get it.
And Sarah Buxbaum catching him in the act. Defense wants you to think about the life insurance. But you should think about it differently. This is a couple who's going through it in their marriage. Why is it time to renew life insurance? Does that make any sense? No. What the life insurance is, what many of defendant's actions are, is the defendant covering his tracks. The cover-up proves the crime. Defendant had control of the scene when he was done, so he took the evidence with him. He didn't need to take the rock. In fact, he knew.
Okay, question. I wonder, okay, Gerhard, so your wife's trying to kill you. You stand up. What are you thinking? Are you thinking about calling the cops? Are you thinking about calling for help? Are you thinking about treating her wounds and taking her home? As this is happening, did you have time to think about, because she had time to scream for help, right? She thought to herself, I'm going to die if I don't scream for help. Why didn't you scream for help? Did you not think you were going to die? So, okay, if you didn't think you were going to die and you thought, oh my God, why are you acting so weird? What else were you thinking? Right? You must have been thinking something else. He's like, no, it happened in a split second. But in the split second it happened, she was able to call for help and think, oh my God, he's going to kill me. And you were unable to think about your next move? Did you think, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Did you think I'm going to call the cops? Did you think I need help? What were you thinking? What were you thinking? Because I feel yes, a lot of us will freeze. A lot of us will fawn. A lot of us will fight back. A lot of us have a lot of responses. And I also assume there's some thought, when you fawn, maybe you freak out because your body has this control over you. You have no choice. And also you're thinking in your head, oh my God, stop. Maybe you're like, oh man, it was crazy. I saw him come out of nowhere and I just didn't even know what to do, bro. I was thinking no way. I hear stories all the time from people in school shootings, in knife fights, in domestic violence. They have stories about what they're thinking. They have a story to tell me. Gerhard didn't have a story to tell me in any way that sounded like anyone else. It's not like this is the first time I've heard a man talk about how he tried to kill his wife or not kill his wife. A lot of people have stories. It just, the way he told it was so weird.
That he was seen with the rock. He knew that Amanda and Sarah saw him with the rock. Why take it? And what reason would Ariel have to make up the syringe? None. Think about what Ariel knew. Ariel knew that he had tried to push her. Ariel knew they were right next to a cliff. Ariel knew that people walked up as she was being beaten with that rock. She had enough already. There's no reason to make up the syringe. Defendant's attorney said something. These are the facts you just can't make up. And that's what the syringe is in this case. It's a fact you just can't make up.
To be fair, and I think this is a weird caveat or tangent, but Chet says time slows down and 30 seconds is a lot. So when the nurse said he was looking at me straight in the eye for 30 seconds, everyone's like, hey, that's a really long time. It is actually a crazy long time. This is the weirdest thing to compare it to, but the average time to pee, right? Think about how long it takes you to pee or how long it takes you to really, do something simple. It goes by quicker and it's also longer than you think it is. You think, it takes me a couple minutes to pee. It does not take you 2 minutes to pee, right? So when she says, 30 seconds he was looking at me. It could have been 10 seconds. It could have been 5 seconds. It could have been, it doesn't matter. The point is it was long enough to look at him. It was long enough in her head to be like, it felt like 30 seconds, right? Like just to look at him and be like, oh my God, right? Like, what am I experiencing? Okay. That's like, you know what I mean? Nuh-uh. Discourse said it takes 90 seconds for mammals to pee. Not me, girl. I pee fast, okay? That's why people think are like, why are you so quick in the bathroom? Girl, I pee a lot and I pee fast, girl, like a racehorse, okay? 90 seconds is a long time. You're peeing for 90 seconds? I've never peed 90 seconds my whole life. No way, girl. 30 seconds, a lot of pee, less than 30 seconds. That's a long time. But anyways, just thinking about it from that perspective, like, it's a long time to do those things, okay? And you know that joke about sex? Like, oh, how long do you last? I don't know, 90 seconds? Hey, 90 seconds is a lot. You know what I mean? 5 minutes is a lot. When people are like, oh, we had sex for 3 hours. You're not having sex for 3 hours, right? These are all the layers of what seconds can look like in these moments, right?
Let's talk about the confession. Emil told you he has no doubt about what the defense told him. If this was truly a goodbye phone call, if this was truly the defendant telling his son that he was going to commit suicide, what purpose at all would there be to accuse Ariel of having an affair? What purpose does that serve in saying goodbye? That makes no sense. It's just trying to throw dirt on Ariel. That's all it is. It's trying to throw dirt on her. It's trying to make her look bad. It's trying to justify his actions because he knew from the minute he did it, and he knew from the minute he planned it, that it was wrong. And then look at that timeline again. Why? It makes no sense. The defendant was simply trying to say goodbye. It was simply a miscommunication between himself and Emil. If it was a miscommunication, why wasn't it cleared up? Why wouldn't he just tell Emil in that second phone call? Why would in neither of the FaceTime calls the defendant say anything about self-defense? Why wouldn't the defendant say anything about Ariel supposedly attacking him? Because in that moment, he was confessing. In that moment, he had a guilty conscience. And that's why he did what he did. That's why he hid. That's why he tried to run from the police. Think about the list of people that would have to participate in this, what essentially is being alleged as a massive conspiracy to believe what defendant's saying. You have to disbelieve Ariel. You have to disbelieve Emil. You have to disbelieve Amanda. You have to disbelieve Sarah. You have to disbelieve the medical evidence. You have to disbelieve the doctor that the defense hired. And you have to disbelieve what you saw with your own eyes.
I think that is the gaslighting of it all. I know that's an inappropriate use of that term. I get it. I know, honey. I'm using the online version. But that is what can make you feel crazy in these situations. The amount of, that's why he said it's unbelievable. Like, you would have to disbelieve all of these people, all of these witnesses, and all of the evidence and everything else. And it's a big ask from people. It's a big ask for a jury to doubt all of this evidence. And yet, hold your butts, okay? There is a chance they come back not guilty. Isn't that insane? Guys, I seriously don't know what they're going to say. Because humans are crazy. Humans are humans. They're going to do crazy shit. There is a huge possibility he's found not guilty. Are you ready for that? Because I'm trying to get ready.
That's why the defense asked you to close your eyes when they played that video. They wanted you to ignore what you see. That's what this case is about. That's what they're asking you to do. Open your eyes, make a decision based only on the evidence, and the decision is clear. The defendant tried to kill her. The defendant tried 3 different ways, and he learned out multiple times that day. It is harder to kill than you may imagine. You were told earlier about the defendant's constitutional rights and the founding of this country and how important that is. What are those 3 phrases that this country was founded on? You probably heard them before. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And in this case, the defendant, beyond a reasonable doubt, made a conscious choice to try and take Ariel's life. He made a conscious choice to kill her. And that is why the only verdict that is supported by the evidence is that the defendant is guilty as charged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Mr. Ball, the jury and your deliberation, before I do, to the first 12 jurors, is there anybody here who feels for any reason they cannot participate in deliberations in this case? I see no hands. So that means Mr. Kiyama, Ms. Kishi, Ms. Pang, and Ms. Yang, I'm able to let you go, but you're not quite yet done. If one of the other jurors cannot complete deliberations, you may get a call to come back and participate in deliberations. Okay? So, even though you get to go back to your regular lives, and you're not sitting here in the courtroom, those 3 rules still apply. Don't talk to anybody about this case. Keep an open mind. Do not try to learn about this case outside of the courtroom until one of 2 things happens. Number 1, you get a call to come back. Or number 2, you get a call letting you know that deliberations are complete and the case is done. So unless or until you get one of those 2 calls, those 3 rules apply. Don't watch any media, just in case you might
I'm not gonna lie, I like him. I think he's a sweetie pie. He seems really considerate and very nice, and he seems very like by the book, but he seems really warm. I like him.
come back and do further jury service.
He also seems like he might also think the defense is crazy.
On behalf of the parties and the rest of the judiciary, thank you very much for your time and your service. I talked about Gold Star jurors early on. We were weathering 2 storms to be here, and all the flexibility and perseverance that all of you showed. That still remains true today as more storms come our way. So again, thank you very much for your dedication, your perseverance, and your service. If I do not have a chance to talk with you later on, I hope you and your families remain safe during this upcoming storm. And again, you have our gratitude. Thank you very much for your service. Feel free to leave the courtroom.
Okay, let's see. I guess so it doesn't show them.
I do have a couple of final instructions before I send you in. Your deliberations take place during what I call anchor's hours. So you're allowed to deliberate until 3:45 today. If you're unable to reach a verdict, I ask you to come back, start again at 9 o'clock.
Okay, so guys, this is the end of it. Like the rest of the video is just recording in the courtroom. It's nothing. There's no sound or visual, right? You can, well, there's a visual, but it's the roof. So this is the rest of the video because they're doing the verdict. So today, which is the 8th of April, there will be a live trial. Some of you might watch it. You might even know before I do. And hopefully I won't be spoiled. Hopefully I won't see it. There is a chance I might before tomorrow's stream, but we'll come back tomorrow and we'll watch the verdict. It's happening. We're going to find out. We're going to see, well, unless for some reason something happens, but we'll be able to see the end of this case. Guys, it's been a ride and I'm happy to go through the end with you. We'll see what happens, but I'm going to prepare emotionally for both. You know, for either way, guilty, not guilty, who knows? You never know what people will decide to do, which is, you know, the point of all of this, right? You just never know what human beings will decide is justice, what they'll decide to do. And they, you know, never surprised, but always disappointed.